Welcome to Untitled. We are doing the Pacific preview today, and we are joined by Bigtime, formerly of many teams, including in Pacific, now
Yeah.
on the desk.
Yeah, chilling on the desk, having a good life. Here to hype you guys up about some Pacific Valorant, tell you why we're going to win everything and talk about the greatest teams to ever exist.
The greatest team to ever exist.
You'll see. We'll get there.
It's always great to get the cheerleaders on, you know. It's always great.
How is it also clean that we bring on a Pacific guest, but it's like the only Englishman in Pacific, basically?
Yeah.
That's
That's
how it is. That's how it
We're
is.
gonna talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, what can you do? But Al, it's fine. I'm happy to be a traitor to the European region. I left years ago, never came back. At least from a Valorant perspective, and I'm happy to be an expat, so to speak. I feel like I can represent well and hype up the teams.
Yes, you're an
But
addict.
that's at home as well. The dream of every Englishman is to not be in England. It's actually close to England as well. Even if they don't, they deny it at the start, it will always be the ultimate dream.
The weather is miserable except today when it's 35 degrees out and the houses aren't
Yeah.
built for it at all. So.
Exactly. I mean, I'm in England right now, and so if I'm sweating and bright red in this video, yeah, you'll know why.
So let's get into it. So, going to go for all three teams today. We are going to start with the free seed coming out of Pacific Global Esports. Start out with route to the tournament for this team. So, Salah has like a clip where he says, I think week 2 of the season, that these guys are going to A-LAN this year, probably to Masters. Now, to be fair, this isn't the bold prediction you would maybe think it was, because at that point they were 2-0.
But to also be fair, they had the hardest games ahead of them after that, and they still managed.
And then they start sliding. So
I think it's still a bold take after week 2. They just beat Secret that week, and it's like to then do all down.
Show me someone else who is not a Global fan who was saying that Global was going to qualify, and I'll say fair play.
I mean, that's right. I said on the desk week 1 before their first game that they make it to London. But also, I'm biased, so it kind of counts less coming from me. You're a more independent authority, so I respect you doubling down so early.
Yeah, I mean, we don't want to give Salah the idea he's an authority figure. You know, let's steal for that. That will be authority abused. But yeah, so first 2 weeks go great for them. 2-0 against Gen G, 2-0 against Secrets. Hardest games to come: lose 2-0 to DRX, lose 2-0 to PRX. Squeak it out in the end. I'm not sure if they were guaranteed plus going into that last week, but I think it would have been like they were 4th seed or something.
They were guaranteed.
But
I remember
it could have been 4th seed, right?
Yeah, they could. If they lost to Nongshim, they were the 4th seed.
Yeah.
I do remember messaging Frostwing Cratch, and he gave a really gangster answer where he was like, "Yeah, this is not how I wanted to make it. Basically, like, this is bullshit." But they did end up getting the week after the win after that. To be fair, so.
Yeah.
But they were guaranteed, I think, after the week 4, I think.
Yeah,
maybe in week 3, by the way.
Possibly, yeah. I mean, it's just such a different ballgame. I think I mean, all of the seeding matters. I mean, this is one of the things which is like nice about these formats. It was funny hearing them basically come out and say, "Oh, well, you know, the whole thing VCT coming in next year is that we're going to make every game matter." And it's like, okay, well, to be fair, the way you've already made these groups work, and you make these formats you have, every game in groups does matter. There are very few dead games in groups compared to basically any other esport, any other sport you could think of. But rant over on that side. But yeah, they win week 5. They get the upper seed. They 2-0 RRQ. They was it 2-0 or 2-1 against PRX?
2-1.
2-1 against PRX. Then they go into the finals weekend in Vietnam. Not so great. 0-2 to Full Sense, 0-3 to PRX, but they're still in the tournament. They're still qualified as 3rd seed. So obviously a very credible run overall.
I will say, I think the key one for me is that the fact that they were able to beat PRX. I think that was like just basically. I mean, I don't know. Maybe it did actually insta qualify them. To be fair,
it did.
Oh yeah, that was the qualification game.
Yeah.
So that was a big one. But also, I will add a caveat for people at home that this happens a lot when a team that, like Global Esports, who is absolutely not expected to win or qualify to the event, qualifies. Everyone kind of does just naturally relax a little bit because that's almost the achievement, and because of the way Riot have kind of made Valorant, qualifying to a LAN is actually for most orgs a bigger achievement than ever winning it, because for them qualifying is everything basically. So once they've qualified, I do think they probably stepped off the gas a little bit, and this is why you see those results, right? But
yeah, I mean, to add to that, obviously our finals weekend was in Ho Chi Minh in Vietnam, and it made a very, very different atmosphere than what they were used to in Korea, where they normally play. So I think that's where you saw. I mean, I will touch on it later on, but obviously Paper Rex had a fantastic time there, and I think that's because they're so experienced on the big stages. And for global, I feel like when I watched them play in that finals weekend, I wasn't watching the same team that beat Paper Rex before, that played with this crazy confidence, that really embraced their own style. They kind of had that little bit of crumble, but I think that's what's so nice about Pacific is we got to try that in Vietnam. They got to try that being on stage in Vietnam, and I think they'll have learned a lot from that, so that shouldn't happen again in London. Fingers crossed. But so I think ultimately that's still a very them losing in Vietnam is a very important part of them getting to London. Like, I think it will help them quite a lot.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, this is always a thing that you get concerned about with, for example, NA teams, because NA you basically don't go outside of it. You don't leave LA for any reason. You don't really road trip much. I believe they're holding stage 2 in Brazil this coming year. That will not be anything close to the atmosphere of these other regions. I will say that now, because I have actually coached 10 years ago, but I have coached at the venue that they're doing it at. It's not like a big fan experience. It is like just very much just another Riot studio essentially.
Shame, isn't it? The Brazilian crowd is like the most insane crowd I've ever played.
Yeah, it's a little bit weird to me that they're doing it like they are doing it, but I guess to be fair, it is it is a pretty cheap way to do it. Let's be honest. Just use studios you've got already. You don't really care about that. Like I'm sure there'll be fans outside and stuff like that, but yeah, it won't be the same as like a big event, which is a shame. Where Europe and APAC will keep getting this sort of stuff, but yeah, it is what it is. I mean, Chile was sick, by the way, for that stuff. The fans there are incredible. Anyway, but yeah, important experience for them, but obviously not the best results. Moving along, so I'm going to just say this quickly at the start of every episode as well. Our format for this is basically we're going to look at 2 maps from these teams in terms of like the analytical side of things. We'll look at what we think is their best map probably, and what we think is their worst map that they've actually played, so excluding perms and that sort of stuff. Best map for global, we have settled on, I mean, mostly me, to be fair. So if the other guys disagree, but yeah, in any case, best map, Breeze. Their record on this to this date: 13-5 versus Nongshim, 13-11 versus RRQ, 39 versus PRX, and 8-13, I believe that was in Vietnam against Full Sense. And their win rates in terms of round stuff, because I think that's also useful to that's like a better barometer almost. They're 3-1 on the map, 62% of rounds won on attack, 50% defense, 55% total. So this is an interesting one. So let's talk about attack first. It's pretty solid for them. Yeah, go.
Pause. Do you send the link, mate?
I have.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. My bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Sorry.
So this is an interesting one. I think they're Breeze. So the comp that they are specifically running at the moment on Breeze is as follows: Viper, Sova, Chamber, Sage, and Neon. Right? You've got the Sage here. Traditionally, I forgot this is like a new thing they've done. I think where you can do that.
Huh.
The feature.
Thanks for that.
Just like highlight the map. It's actually kind of useful. But you've got the Sage, right? Traditionally, a really odd character to kind of play on attack because the kit's a little bit odd. There's one map where traditionally she's been really strong on attack. I don't know. I'm talking traditionally. I'm talking like way back here, to be fair, because I don't know. I don't think people play this in Yonks, but Sage attack on Split. I remember like 2021, 2022 era when the entire thing was we go out of B main, we put the wall down. What can he do to stop us? There's nothing he can do to stop us, right? That was like, and this was before she had the and this was before the wall could be projected in front of you to a distance as well, which was kind of important. but yeah, you apart from like some like odd edge cases like that, it was like, well, what does Sage really do on the attack? Well, she kind of enables you to play like these 2-man setups sometimes because you play, I don't know, you attack here a little bit, you prod. If they are running a comp which has Sova on the thing, maybe they shock dart you, they get some chip damage on you, they negate all that stuff basically with her heal. That was kind of the idea, right? You just always get people back into fighting shape, or she just runs in and takes the fights herself, like plays like a control like a Brimstone player would play, for example, on most maps, where he just takes the fights themselves. And that is kind of like always how she's been. And there was an interesting round here I wanted to show, so I've got a bunch of links for this as usual. I think this one is interesting, right? This is from RRQG. You guys want to see this, yeah?
Yep.
Cool. So this is an interesting round for me, right? Look how they're going over Viper. Look up here. This is like a eco slash false buy for them, hero buy, however you want to call it, right? Look how they attack basically on this. Drone out. They put the wall, and they're doing this into an ult round, which I play really well against. But they put the wall up mid-site. So they're basically getting rid of all the tricky angles up here. Viper holds it. He's going on this mid lurk. He's going on this, like, he's holding this wall forever, basically. I think he uses it super, super late in the round. You're neon walling to get out. Obviously, this is a hero buy / eco, right? With the ult. I would say this isn't as punchy as some of the executes I've seen from other teams on Breeze, to be fair. It's a little bit... but it's very solid, right, at the same time. They understand the win con of the round. They are getting a little bit of separation here. They're getting the neon out onto here. And this stage was super, super important for the entire way they are to play out around as a result, because they're able to cut off angles, they're able to just keep pushing onto it. I think it's super, super important, right? And this is kind of the thing that I noticed a lot when looking at this team. It was...
You cut that, mate.
Yeah, it wasn't on there, don't I?
Okay.
This is a thing that I... So yeah, this is the thing. They're not as punchy in terms of executes and stuff like that as some other teams, but they play very, very solid, it feels like. I don't know what you guys sort of think about that in terms of how they're attacking sites, in terms of how they're making this space on attack.
Yeah, I mean, when I first saw this comp, I was really worried about their attack. Like, we saw it first in that game against Nongshim. Their defense was so solid, they barely had to play attack. And then in that game against RRQ, they were down 7-5 at the half. So I was like, okay, well, now they have to really show us something on attack. But they did I feel like they did a great job of mixing these executes that we just talk about. And I agree, I don't think they're perfect, but they're enough to condition and show that you can hit fast. But I felt like the real strength of their attack was being able to just contact walk these places on the map. They would just split up, fan out. They'd send Autumn on the chamber just up to Jewel in mid, or they'd like 3-man, they would often like slow the A main at the start to hold A main, and then they would just swing it. They'd just be able to fight together and pressure around the map just by kind of being able to walk and take fights. And if they took chip damage, they can heal with the Sage. Chamber obviously has a way to like get out. So I think they disrupted the pace that a lot of people are used to on Breeze. So they found themselves finding a lot of these picks quite early, and then when they want to group up and do that attack feels a lot punchier all of a sudden if you're in a big advantage, if you've baited out all that stopping util already.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good point. In particular, I want to focus on this focus on this point about Autumn, right? So Autumn, historically, a very good player in terms of particularly attack or protect scope. I remember going back to like the FBX times. This was like a huge sort of strength for him. They're really smart about how they play mid on this map, and they're really smart about how they use Autumn. And also like they're able to play him on Chamber this map. Really good, honestly. Chamber's probably his most natural agent, I would say. He played like 7 agents in the last in this split, so like 8 agents, something like that. So he's like an ultra flex. But this is like a very natural thing for him as well, and it like really helps him to be able to exploit that on this site. And it's just a case of, again, they're a very solid team, right? And it's scary to play against a team who are that solid on what I would kind of consider to be quite an open map, in terms of how it plays, in terms of the angles, in terms of, as opposed to more closed maps, like, for example, like Split, historically Binds. I think like this Breeze really fits them. This is another round I had marked out here with how they were playing on the attack. But yeah, it's a really good ult round here. Really smart in terms of how they scale onto site again. we haven't shown too much of these longer rounds in terms of contact walking, but that's because obviously it's a little bit harder to show those rounds because they are done over the duration, if that makes sense. And yeah, I just think they're a very, very, very good team on this map as a result.
Yeah. And I love how they use the wall there to get out of the choke as well. Like it's so easy for a Sage player to just sit on the wall and go, oh well, I'll put it down in the post one, and then they die.
Yeah.
I think Javi's pretty pro. I think for me, I like seeing Javi on the Sage by far the most. He's good at a lot of roles and he's a very, very smart caller, but I feel like his individual performance really goes up when he's on this agent as well. And I think he just understands how to get value.
Yeah.
I think using the wall as an angle breaker is really smart. I mean, the guy still gets one because I think he clips on the wall the neon. But I think there's a really important part about this comp, which, in my opinion, as someone who loves Breeze, actually, I don't actually like this comp. I think it's a bad comp fundamentally. However, I think fundamentally it's a really bad comp. However, I think in this meta, with the comps that people are playing, it is actually a very good comp. Apart from RRQ has a perfect, in my opinion, comp to counter this comp, which is even more impressive that GE won, by the way, especially after losing on defense. The reason RRQ have a really good comp compared to PRX or the other teams that GE played against is because the other teams were playing this Omen double duelist comp that is quite meta, let's say right now, right? And that Omen comp struggles really badly against Chamber, especially because you're never going to be in a position where you'll ever get value with Omen Flash against the Chamber unless the Chamber is playing weirdly, basically. That comp is deceptively good on defense, especially with Sage, because even though the Breeze is quite an open map, these choke points with this new map change are incredibly stiff. And once you get stuck on that choke point, these choke points against that Sage, you are not getting back out onto site because Chamber will clip one or two of you, especially if the Chamber player is good. I remember Heretics playing this comp against Na'Vi, and it was just over and over again where the Chamber would get a pick, the Sage would completely slow down the execute, and then you've just lost every single timing completely, because the only way you win on attack on Breeze is basically because the enemy team can't rotate quick enough, right? Whereas when you have the Sage, when you have the Chamber, when you have these things slow, like basically complete killing and execute, it is a lot easier to rotate into fights, right? So yeah, the way you're going to get value on this comp with defense is by the Chamber basically taking these deep peaks, and the Sage just basically killing your execute every single time, right? And then the issue you run into is, okay, you try and avoid them. If they split them up, it's very hard to. RQ's comp is actually very good for this. Harbor is perfect against Chamber. As a Chamber player, it should be unplayable against Harbor. KO is one of the good agents against Chamber as well, because he has flashes to break through, also with the knife. So the fact that they won this map, even though they had the mismatch disadvantage, is really good. But the fact that they consistently have a mismatch against other teams is, I think, a big reason as to why they're beating teams on Breeze, right? Because you cannot deal with this comp with that Omen double duelist. There, in my opinion, there is not a lot of ways. The one of the only consistent ways, in my opinion, of beating this comp is by doing these splits, right? And the way you would have to do them, and it would have to be super coordinated. You'd have to be super, basically, you cannot make a mistake. Is you have to basically have first contact in main, for example. Let's say you're doing it with. Doesn't matter, right? Let's say you're playing RRQ comp. You have to have some level of first contact where the main guys are pressuring as if it's a 5-man execute, while the guys come up second contact and try and kill people holding the choke point. However, this is a lot easier to say and do in theory than in practice, because all it takes is basically one Chamber peak. All it takes is basically one rotate to catch you, and it's over, right? So yeah, I don't like this comp because it fundamentally should be very counterable to how I grew up playing Valorant, but in the current state of Valorant, it actually works quite well.
Yeah, I think that's a really big thing. When they first brought it out against Nongshim, we'd already seen Nongshim's Breeze. They were playing the Neon Phoenix, and they went like 12 rounds in a row. They just like 5-man exec through this tiny choke. And I saw that GE had picked had picked Sage, and I was like, oh, it's wraps unless Nongshim have got this figured out. And they had no idea. They'd never seen a Sage slow in all of their lives, so they hard crumbled. And I think they sort of know that this comp isn't perfect, but Frost as a coach is so big on countering the meta, and I definitely agree with you. I think that's what this is very good at. And I think one way that we see them time and time again trying to counter these splits is they'll have the Sage play towards that A main to kind of slow it or stop. Sometimes he's on a boost wall even. But they like sitting someone with a judge in the doors towards mid to stop the split. Like they put Yuditan there all the time with the judge, or they have Autumn just be like peeking out so aggressively into mid on that chamber, then it's disrupting those timings. So I think it's like, to me, I think this is a really interesting case, and I think it shows very good coaching because they sort of know it's bad, and they're having to like patch the ship as it's sinking in a way, but it still looks like it's sailing. You know, like it's still has a good win rate, and I like it that it's different. I'm curious, do they stick with this in London or not? That for me is the biggest question. I like the Sage a lot, and I'd like to see them run it, but I think they might change some of the like supporting pieces around.
Yeah,
I do think with the Phoenix meta, I think it would be fair to say we're in a Phoenix meta. With that, I do see this comp being harder to run just because, especially on defense or on attack rather, against the Phoenix defense, you should just not be able to play the game basically because this comp only kind of works on attack if you're able to get out into this zone and then break the angle with the wall. If there's a Phoenix sitting here with a flash, you're going to get run over basically because you don't have good utility. And I mean, you have the Sage Slower, but again, once the Phoenix has done his thing, it's kind of hard to stop him, especially because Phoenix as a character has that ultimate ability where he can just, on their attack, run in and waste every slow, break the wall, basically get rid of the chamber. That should be a good counter to it, but I'm also interested to see basically if they stick with it.
Yep. We didn't talk too much about the defense. They had a little bit of a struggle in playoffs with this, to be fair, but this is a Breeze thing. This has to happen sometimes in Breeze. I remember, for example, from reviewing already, G2 had a really good Breeze team, had a really bad game against NRG. Obviously, also a good Breeze team. In the NRG game, they were just hard executing G2, and G2 couldn't really answer if we were in a good position. It was a little bit different on this map. There was a thing where Full Sense were just hiding, contacting mid-round and jumping every single angle, and GE were having problems dealing with it. To be fair, this does speak as well to like how you play around Phoenix, which so that is like a consideration if the meta keeps going as I think it's going to go into is London, but yeah. But we also saw go.
Something that Big Time you mentioned, which is a really good point about how GE were very comfortable disrupting a lot of movements on their defense, and that being really successful is actually the idea where you have to play Breeze defense. You cannot basically ever let a team just execute. If a team starts picking up tempo where they just exec, you're losing the game 13-3 basically. Yeah. But when you see teams basically have a good defense on Breeze, and a good defense is about 6-6. 6-6, I would consider if my team got 6-6 on Breeze, I'd be like, okay, we did it, boys. We're winning this game. Is when you're disrupting, you're taking elbow peaks, you're taking mid peaks, you're maybe, taking A main peaks. You're basically just saying, okay, we're willing to lose some rounds and we're going to play really aggressive and we're going to play kind of almost monkey-like, but you have to play that because you have to basically say, okay, we have to play in this risky way, otherwise they will just exec on us every single round and we will lose.
Yeah, there was a really good round actually. So obviously they struggled a little bit in playoffs, but they had a basically locked out PRX on this side. I think it was earlier in playoffs, right? Then I was looking for one round that kind of captures what makes GE's defense good in this regard, and I think this is probably the best one I could find. So there's a few things here. One, chamber aggressive on weak side. Takes a lot heavy space on B. I think Sage does this quite aggressively on A. Obviously can't do it to the same degree, but likes to slow wall, come down into here, hold this lobby. 2, Viper takes his first timing down mid, just willing to walk down here, which I think is a very common thread I've seen between a lot of the really good teams of this map, is just a willingness to basically take these timings onto B. 3, smart setup on site. They contest his first angle. Not letting themselves get caught mid-site. They are really good at playing off of this box here. They are really good at playing double doors, particularly with, like, they swap these guys around. This is always like a chamber peaks thing as well. I mean, the way they play A is super, super good, actually.
Do you see my point as well about them disrupting the execute, where they wipe them because they're just peeking in front of you constantly?
Yeah.
Basically.
Well, this is a mistake I think a lot of teams make on this map, actually, to be fair. This is like a recent thing I've seen and kind of figured out. So this map has become like wall hell, basically, right? Particularly recently, because now it's a case of you have the Viper wall up here, people are running Viper Harbor, you have a second wall up here, right? Now, a lot of those comps don't really have... people are running comps where... I mean, we've seen a fair bit of the KO, to be fair, with the flashes, right? We've seen like other flashes and stuff. A lot of these comps don't have counter flashes, and the mistake a lot of teams are making are they saying, okay, well, we're seeing this or whatever, we're going to try and hang around here, we're going to hang around behind the enemy wall with whatever you've got, basically. Stack up on the wall, and they always lose this fight because either someone gets a quick flank from mid, or they just burst through the wall, flash them down, they've cut off the deep lines here, bam, dead, right? I think there's a lot to be said for basically using the physical terrain to your advantage here. Just hold this spot if you're going to hold anything, because you're realistically, you don't have flashes, and obviously this comp doesn't really have flashes, right? I'm not going crazy. Yeah, it doesn't have flashes. You just have to scan. So it's like, okay, fine, you can take this. You can take this all the way up to here. We physically have this space here. We can have this space here. We can have this space here. We can hide in double doors a lot of the time if we want to. We're going to play from these physically safe things rather than trying to screw with you on the wall, basically. Like I think that's something that G does really, really well on this map. To be fair, they retake better on this map than any team I've seen.
Yeah, that's so nice. And I think one thing from that round that you just pulled up before from that I really like is that they understand that the sort of the stopping power of Sage is one time only, right? You put that wall down, you throw a solo down, and you've stopped them in that moment. And I think there will be a lot of other teams that sort of don't do that reaction properly. I think that Autumn just sending it out B, Pat sending it out mid. They like restrict that map so heavy because they've won this A fight. They know Paper X have to leave, and they've already shut down the map. I think you can't be a coward playing this comp on defense. You have to be okay just taking a risk, like Pat just running it down mid or running it out of B. I also think part of that was probably an anti against Paper X, knowing how much like they like to 5-0. But I think that's what I like about this team is that even if they play off meta, it never, well, very very rarely feels just cheesy, just like it doesn't feel half baked. So I like that when they play the Sage, they understand what it means to play a Sage and they know how to get the value.
Strong here, muted for a little bit here. Short version is we're just talking about G worst map. We're talking about the Lotus. They've played 3 different comps on the maps, most recently being the triple Sentinel comp.
Yeah.
And we'll just discuss from there.
I mean, I think for me, their Lotus, like, this is almost the caveat to what I was just saying, where I was like, oh, it never feels gimmicky. Like, that triple Senti felt gimmicky. Where I feel like they haven't figured out this map at all, and I know that they rate Deadlock from talking to them. They all think that it's a great answer in this meta, but I watched them pick this triple Senti. We had Jovi on the desk, obviously very good friends with Frost, and he said, I think they cook Paper X with this. And then we loaded in. I saw Crystal on the Deadlock put both of his trips in the back cubby of A and then go swing forward and die. And I was like, okay, this is a fast game. It's done. They just didn't get it. And I don't think... They just don't feel stable here in any way. Like you say, they're changing comp all the time. I would love to see them just stop banning this or play something a lot more standard in my mind.
So this is the second time I'm going to say this, but again, awful comp. Sorry for us, I can't always glaze you. But it's strong. Do you remember back when we were in, like, let's say the first 2 months of Valorant, and I had it in my head that if you started defense and pick like a comp, literally a comp like this, maybe you could like 11-1 them and then win it a few rounds on attack. This is what this seems like, mate. Like the comp, when I saw Fnatic running this, which is like the most anti-boaster comp ever, in my opinion, of course, he probably knows himself better than me, but it just makes no sense to me because, first of all, guys, and this is, I think, a key thing that a lot of people don't realize about Double Duelist is Double Duelist inherently is extremely good at getting info on the map. The reason it's extremely good at getting info on the map, on defense especially, is because Duelist can take peeks into, we call them info lines, and an info line is basically a line like this, right? Where once a Duelist has this line, you have first contact info, and that means that if they try to XXC, you will have enough time to rotate based on that duelist info, right? So that is why double duelist comps, even though they maybe lack initiators, they actually do inherently have quite good info, especially on defense. This comp, however, not only has the fade, has a Cypher, which is very give or take with how his info is. I'm talking about aggressive info here, right? This comp is bunker on site and pray we win, but that doesn't work as soon as you get anxious and again, as you said, peek in front of your chips because you're lacking info and get banged out in the head, right? That's the reason these comps don't work. That's the reason, for example, in theory, it's nice to say, oh, if, well, they can't go C, they can't go B, they can't go A, what are they supposed to do? That doesn't work in a real game of Valorant against a team, especially like PRX, who will just bang you out in the head if you peek wrong, right? And go on.
No, I was gonna say, I think from what I heard, they prepared this comp not for Paper X, for a different team. But then they didn't get to show it, so they had it prepared and they thought it could stop Paper X's aggression, which I understand in theory, but it definitely didn't play out like that. And there was one round, I don't have it to hand, unfortunately, but they do an A fight. And Frost even spoke about this in the interviews after the game. He's like, we're playing triple Senti. Why are we A fighting all the time? And they did this heavy A fight. They threw out like The slow, the C's, the paranoia. They basically dropped everything. Jing like just double satchels past it and domes 2 of them in the head, and it's like, well,
I mean,
at some point you gotta you gotta call
the
it a
problem
loss.
is also they're playing this against Race Jet, who for the entire Valorant history
Yeah,
just
it's
ignore that
it's
shit. They don't give a fuck. Like they don't care. And we're in a meta where those characters are rampant. So this comp is never gonna. This comp would maybe work if you're playing against like an old school, double initiator or like Viper. You're playing against Viper, Killjoy, Omen. Like that comp. Okay, I can see it working there, right? But against double duelists, this shit's never gonna work. And I think I'll just cap this comp off by saying this comp only works if the enemy team sees it and gets checked out. And all 3 of us have been coaches here. I'm sure we've all had players who will see a comp and check out instantly because he doesn't, because he doesn't like the way it looks, right? Not naming any names. That comp, I feel like that only works basically if one of your players says, "Fuck this, I don't want to play against this," and checks out. I think that's the only way basically you can. And obviously PRX are not going to check out in that situation, right? So yeah.
Strong here, dubbing over for a little bit. I'm muted here, but we're just basically asking about who is the key player for this team.
I'm interested in what you guys are going to say because I think there's a very obvious one, but I'm interested if we're going to have the
yeah.
same
I
name.
mean, for me, there's 2 that spring up. Like Patman is the biggest one. He has been the star of the show for them. Like he looks like he's left PRX and he's gone to a whole new level. And I heard Alex talk about this as well, and he was like, well, because playing Initiator in Paper X is basically a death sentence. You're trying to tame
Yeah.
Rottweilers and throw support in util for. It's a hard job to succeed in. He was good there, and now he's been unleashed. You see him play a lot more roles. I also know he has much more of a voice in this team when it comes to calling as well. Javi trusts him a lot, like especially in these games against Paper X. Like Pat, like I don't know if you've listened to the voice comms of them, but Pat was routinely like, "I know what they're gonna do. Trust
gonna
me.
bring
Let's
that up
stack
as well.
this site." So he's grown into being a very, very capable player who's incredibly flexible. He's playing it, you can play. I feel like he can play anything but duelist, to be honest, and I'd back him on it. So he's the obvious answer. I think the other one that I want to kind of shout out is Javi on the kind of primary IGL, because he doesn't IGL in an easy system. Some IGLs have it easy. They have like monster aimers, and you go, "Okay, guys, let's go A," and they do all the hard work for you by pressing mouse 1. Javi doesn't do that. He's like a super. He's much more of an old school IGL. He's been around for a long time. He like does it properly. Even on when he was in Naus. Exactly. He's old school 4-4-2 Valorant. Like, let's bait out some rotates. Let's do it properly, boys. So I want to see him being able to do that against better teams in London. That's the big thing. And I know for us, there's going to be 1,000 changes in this team when it comes to compositions, when it comes to map vetoes, when it comes to traps for the opponent within those things. Like, he has a lot to remember and a lot to learn. So if he can pull it off, then the team can do great. But if he kind of struggles under that, they might do worse.
Just you said something there, which just for some reason brought back this memory, which was you said about some IGLs have it easy. Now, I've been very public about how I think Boaster is the GOAT. So this is 100% not a diss towards Boaster. I think he's amazing. But there was a period, and I think you both will remember this, where Fnatic had obviously Leo Chronicle, like that 2 trophy winning team. And they were running quite simple strats because you don't need to run amazing things when you have that roster, right? And they were just doing normal things, like straight up basic rounds, but doing them well, right? And of course, Boaster has developed a lot since then as well, and obviously done really good with lesser parts. But do you guys remember when every single team tried to copy Fnatic, not realizing that they didn't have Alpha Leo Chronicle? Like, do you remember how people were like, "Yeah, we just took some Fnatic rounds," and then they get banged out on 13 Freed or whatever, and they're like, "Why did this happen?" It's like, obviously it's gonna happen. You don't have Leo Chronicle Alpha and I even forget the 4th guy. That's how stacked they were, mate. But it's probably who was it actually? Leo Alpha Chronicle Dirk. Like, bro, like literally, I remember in Europe we used to say that just the Avengers. Like, what are we supposed to do against this? And it just popped into my head because
there
are
you're
just
right.
some teams where it's like
a good IGL will put people in the right positions, right? Both did that on that team. I say Javi's the opposite on this for me, where he can't do that. I mean, they have, and I'm not saying they don't have firepower, but they're not reliant on firepower in that same way. So. For me, it's all about how well is Javi able to call on those bigger stages, and when he's going to have so much to remember. Also, it's worth noting that when we've seen them had to play like fast, it got a little bit tougher, as in like not week to week. This is a team that does very well with prep time. So I'm curious on these super fast turnarounds, how that will look. Because like this Lotus that we just spoke about with that triple Senti, they had it cooked up, I think it must have been for the full sense game. And then they had to show it in a best of 5. They don't have time to change, so they get caught out without that. So yeah, in my mind, it's one of those two. I don't know what do you guys think for the key player?
Go on, Sean.
I mean, I think I also thought Xavi, to be honest. The way they play, sort of, yeah, it seems super, super important to how they play. And obviously, Batman's got the credentials, the world experience, but I think this team is a lot's going to rest on Xavi's shoulders coming into this tournament. Salah?
Yeah.
So, I'm going to sound like an idiot now, but I will say I think they have actually one of those weird rosters where everyone, like, they don't have like a mega star, like just they don't have an Aspas just being the main character. I feel like they're all quite an equal team, and I love equal teams, right? So that's first of all, I think all 5 players are actually quite good and carry their weight most of the time. So I think Xavi and obviously Patman is the obvious choice, I would say. But one person I think I actually quite like a lot is Crystal. This guy's really good for the clutch, and I think when you're a team like Global, where you're not supposed to win the games you're winning, and you're basically coming out of nowhere, I think having players like that where they just are always good for the clutch, they're always good, and some of the movements this guy's doing, and I can see he's making a lot of correct decisions. I think he's kind of like there's a lot of rounds I watched where Crystal just does the correct thing, and it goes unnoticed, obviously, because it doesn't show up on the scoreboard. You know, you guys will know this, for example. There are some players where you have them and you're like, thank fuck I have this guy, because he's, you know, he's taking the angles that no one else is thinking about. He's doing things that no one else is thinking about. So Crystal is like an honorable mention for me in that sense. I actually really think he's doing really good.
E.g. Sender is what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's like players like that where coaches love them, but no one else ever talks about them. I think Crystal is one of them. And I think it makes sense also because he was an IGL in Ascension, right? And I actually, for a bit, think he was the IGL of this team. But yeah, the guy's just super smart and he's just making correct decisions. And I will also say with Patman, what a gangster, man. Like when I hear, and you'll know this as a coach, when you hear a player say, guys, trust me, it's going to be like this, that guy could say the most outrageous thing possible and just not being true, and it doesn't matter, you will win that round. Like it's a very high chance you will. He could say anything, bro. He could say like, just go, hey, and you will trust because of the way you're saying, and the way he was saying it, bro, even I believed him in that moment that, you know, this guy has the solution, right? So having a player like that who G's up in that moment, especially in a game where like I would wonder what the odds were for this game actually, because I think PRX also was stomping them every single time. Like I think they played like 5 times and they stomped them every single time.
They've throughout the whole history of both of these orgs, it was 9-0 to Paper X. And like, I mean, I was a part of some of those losses, man. Like I felt what it's like to play against Paper X. And then that qualification game hit, and I remember like I saw them I saw the 2 teams in like the corridor, and Paper X were having fun, but like they always have fun. They're a relaxed team how they approach things. They always have been. But I saw the GE guys and they looked so hungry. Like they walked on the stage and you just felt like they wanted it. The series started and like it was just obvious to me that they were going to win it from as soon as the kind of game began. Paper X weren't stomping like they normally stomp, and I think a big part of that was Patman. He was done. He was fed up with losing to his old teammates, basically, and that's why he took over the game a lot more and was just like, guys, trust me, I have this read. I know what they're going to do.
And I'm telling you, you guys know this better than anyone. When a player is like that, you just feel so fucking confident. It's crazy. Like it sometimes it depends on the player. Like if you have a player who talks a lot, then maybe it means less. But when a player like that just starts saying, "Yeah, we're gonna win," like this is how it just. I'm also being a bit indulgent on this episode, by the way. But when you said about like you know when someone is like locked in when you see them in the arena, it happens a lot, right? And it's true, you can tell. And I just for some reason struggled. Do you remember when Gentlemate's coaches, after being like 0-4, showed up in suits to our game, like for the first time ever, showed up in like black suits?
That's terrifying,
bro. I remember because we were like actually in a good spot in Vitality at that point, and we'd beaten Gentlemates twice. And I remember City's assistant coach, for the first time I've ever seen these guys do this, showed up in black like funeral suits, and I was like, "What the fuck's going on?" And then they just smoked us, and I was like, "Okay, wait, these guys showed up to our fucking funeral."
I wasn't around for that one, but I remember because that was like that was after we were 2-1 in the group. We'd beaten the two best teams in the group. If we won Gentlemates game, we would have basically been locked for playoffs. Because we were playing Gentlemates and we were playing Giants and we were playing Kuwait. It's like, okay, if we win Gentlemates, we're just locked. We lost to Gentlemates, we scrape out against Giants. We get into a situation last week where if we lose to Kuwait, we can actually lose playoffs, and we actually lose to Kuwait, and we actually lose playoffs. And it's like, okay, GG.
Mate, I just remember like the Koi and them just being 0-4 or whatever the fuck they were, but these guys showing up like it was like the grand finals in Suits. I just remember that being like, I remember seeing that and being like, oh fuck.
Yeah.
Sorry for the being a bit self-indulgent. So it's okay.
Yeah. But yeah, so did you actually say who you think the key player is?
Oh yeah, no, I did. Yeah, so I think it's Crystal. Well, I think it's Patman, but I think Crystal is a very honourable mention.
Fair enough. Okay. And finally, what do we think? What's expectations? What do we think like this team should be aiming for? Like they go away from this, they think, okay, this is a good tournament for us.
I think. Oh, sorry, Karen.
Yeah, I mean, I think they kind of have to be. You want to see this team like in a final, basically, either upper or lower final. They have to be like in the hunt for the championship, essentially.
Oh, that's okay.
But that is the bar.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, go.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, I was going to say top 4. I think top 4, they can walk away with their heads high. Now, I think that is like a bit of a
Wait,
that's a goal for
this
them.
year.
yeah, but I think like they also like from knowing the people inside the team. I think this is a team that will always have doubters because it isn't. I don't think they quite have that star quality in a lot of ways. They're very rugged. So the casual fan especially doesn't really like they like showiness. So I don't think Global have that. So I think people will sleep on them a little bit but from talking to them, they're not okay if they don't get top 4 inside that team. If they don't get top 4 at the Masters, they're going to be like, well, who do we need to change? What needs to happen to get top 4? You know, like I remember speaking to them when they missed out on Santiago, and they were like, Frost was absolutely convinced they were going to make it to Santiago. Like when I spoke to him before, he's like, if we don't make it, I have failed this team, and they didn't make it, and he was like, yeah, I failed them. I can't believe we messed up this badly, but now we're going to go to London and we're going to stomp London. And like, you know, how many times does a fortune teller have to get a prediction right before you start to go, okay, maybe this guy knows something? Like, he was spot on about them getting all the way through to London. And I think like the one thing I like is this is a team that's constantly learning and constantly growing. I think top 4 is like the kind of stretch goal for them. I think at the very minimum, we should be seeing them get out the group stage. If they get grouped, then oh my god, Frost is going to lose his mind. There's going to be some whoopings on that plane ride home.
The issue I have, first of all, I love Frost's mentality. He's been on clout recently. It's been, you have to respect it. But for me, I think again, really good to have that mentality. I think it's going to take them far. I do think I want to see them against like a Heretics, mate, because Heretics are the kind of players where if they don't respect their opponent, they're going to run you over. Like Heretics only lose when they kind of think they can lose. In my opinion, right? I'm not in the team, but if they play against the Heretics, if they play against like a Vitality, I could see them fucking up Vitality just basically with a strat diff, basically, because Vitality do play quite simply and quite basic. But I think for me, it's going to be about who is their first game? Lev. So that's a good game because that's, a bunch of cracked kids versus, kind of a similar vibe, of course, maybe not as young. So it's two teams that have kind of like maybe no one expected to be there, but are very actually good teams. I think the next game for them is going to be interesting. Like if they play against an NRG, if they play against a Heretics, against a PRX, against basically those teams who know how to get it done on big stages.
Well, second game, the list of teams they can play, obviously, there's the 2 Chinese teams. Can't play left because they just played them. Full Sense, potentially. Vitality, Foot, NRG.
If I'm thinking about this as like I'm not a coach, I'm a CEO. As a coach, you think you should win every game, by the way, if you have the correct mentality. But if I'm thinking of this as like a CEO, for me, I just want to see the team basically go and be competitive against those big dogs. I think they're good to run over a team like, Full Sense. I think they're good to run over a team like, maybe some of the Chinese teams, maybe, for example, Footballist, I think would be a really interesting game. But I want to see how they do against the big dogs. I want to see how they do against the teams that know how to just win games no matter how they're feeling, no matter what the other team is throwing at them. And I think then you can kind of start making standards. Because if they go and they bang out an NRG, they bang out, a Heretics, then, you have a conversation actually that this team could do it. But until then, I think it is a bit early, and I think, they need time. And I think for all of those players, I think Autumn's the only one who consistently went to lands, right? I don't think any of them.
Patman, I guess, is one of Masters, right?
I guess, of course, yeah. So Patman and Autumn, that's actually quite balanced, I would say, in some ways. So I don't think, and as you said, also going to Vietnam first is probably going to be a nice boost for them in terms of, dealing with that first, right? But yeah, I want to see how they are against those teams. I think that's going to be the big challenge for them.
I mean, that's
I think for me, making out playoffs is.
I mean, I think that's the expectation comes from, right? It's just a case of there is like I think there's 4 teams basically in this tournament where you can say, okay, well, these teams are like seriously credentialed, seriously played a lot of these events, should be contending for. It depends how you rate them, right? 4 or 5. So PRX, G2, and Heretics are the obvious top 3 for me. Then NRG and Vitality you can make cases for, and everyone else is a little bit less experienced, to be fair. There aren't really any, like, obviously, Full Sense. Full Sense is a weird one, but they haven't been, because obviously under Talon they've been to some events, but they haven't been to as many as you maybe think. Foot haven't been to much stuff, to be honest.
Definitely not with this roster, mate.
Yeah.
Only Yetuj really has been to a lot of lands.
Leviathan's all young, DRX, XLG, EDG, all experienced on the international stage, but also coming, expectations are lower for them, right? So there's like a tier of teams in which, okay, you would think GE should be able to come out on top, and then that puts them automatically almost in like at least top 6, but then looking at top 4, depending on how the matchups come in for them, right? So
yeah. I mean, I agree. I think it's been a good tournament for them if they can come out as the best of the rest. If they lose to G2 or Heretics or Paper X in a big game, and that's what drops them out of the tournament, I think that's okay. It's more that teams like Leviathan, it will be teams like Foot, it'll be teams like the Chinese teams, where if you lose to them, then that's where it becomes much more of a problem.
Yeah,
in their mind at least.
Yeah.
If I'm them and I, for example, go out in the Swiss system, but I go out losing to like PRX 2-1, really close game, Heretics 2-1, really close game, I'm going home happy. I'm saying, okay, we challenged them.
It would be impressive if they lost those guys in the Swiss, but
you get what I mean. Like, if basically, Dennis, who?
Yeah, but that's why the expectation should be to get out of groups, because all three of the like, at least it's not like Santiago where the Swiss is a massive dogfight, right? We would say the top 3 teams are all not in the Swiss. It's the top 3 teams plus EDG, right? So
I guess then the better way of saying it is like the NRGs, the Vitalities. See how they do against those, and if they have close games but they lose, I can be happy with that, But if they, for example, as you said, lose to a Chinese team, lose to one of those teams, then it gets a bit more interesting.
Yeah. But we'll be seeing them soon, starting with the left matchup on, I believe it's the 7th of June. All right, moving on.
Just minutes.
Okay, on to Full Sense. So, coming into the split, I'd say they're probably one of the more surprise packages across all of the leagues, right? Like, no one, obviously, we know this team's always been good before as Talon. We always knew they were a solid team. They got a very soft group, to be fair, which is always helpful in this thing. They were okay at kickoff. They went 2-3 in kickoff. They were like up around 3, and then they just fell down. Lost to Nongshim, upset to DFM, lost to that DRX team, which is probably the best team outside this tournament, to be fair. That has been all year. But yeah, stage 1. 2-0 DFM, 2-0 Zeta, 2-0 Varel. Pretty easy games. 1-2 against RRQ, 1-2 against T1. They still go in into upper bracket from that group as a result. 2-0 TRX, 2-0 T1, 2-0 Global, and then 0-3 in the final against Paper X. So, what do we think in terms of just firstly this run to the final so far?
I think it was, like I said, I think they had a soft group. The first 3 games were the 3 Japanese orgs, right? DFM, Zeta, Varel.
Yeah.
And that's what made the group soft, is it had those 3, basically. So they got this really nice warm up, and it was easy to start to hype them because they had, they won pretty cleanly in a lot of these matches, and Primy's doing Primy things, so it's easy to be high on them. And then they played the RRQ game, and I think Jovi had them downloaded from when obviously Jovi was a part of
Yeah.
Talent, played with all of those guys. He had them downloaded, I think, and that's what cost them that game. And then T1, they got outshot, which, T1 have the potential. We
Yeah.
know how, it's a Korean super team, basically. So, and that was the first time the kind of doubt came in. And then they changed all their comps up, basically, for playoffs. They made putting a big sweeping moves across the thing where Cruz was putting himself on Sentinel. He's playing a lot more Vice. And the big reason he said we were getting banged out on a defender side. He said our attacker sides were always fantastic because we can shoot, we can run at people and shoot, but we're not smart enough on how we play. So he put himself on Sentinel, so he had a bit more time to direct people around the map, and he trusted himself to hold the site. And then he said also the other side to that was really simplify things for Leviathan. He moved Leviathan across onto these smokes roles where he can just kind of be a support player, but also have his gun out a lot more. And he has a lot less to think about. And I think we saw that change hit in playoffs, and they just went mad confident. Another thing he said, which I really kind of agreed with, I don't know what you guys think as well as coaches on this, is so D-Love, the actual coach, was in hospital at the start of playoffs. So he wasn't there to help them. So Cruz was basically doing all the coach work, all the prep work, and playing. And Tila from the hospital bed basically watched all the VODs and came up with a big list of things, of suggestions that he wants to have applied to the team. Cruz took it and immediately said to him, I'm not showing them any of this. He said, the one thing I can't do is talk about mistakes to these guys right now. Is I have to have them feeling like they're 1,000% confident and that they're a billion times better than whoever they play. I don't want them to even know they're making mistakes. I want them to play entirely on their instinct. And then we saw the playoffs run happen. And I feel like they just it was the prime example of switch off the brain, play with confidence, and nobody could stop them. That is truly how you can sum up the team. And obviously, speaking of which, Cruz putting himself back in the active roster for stage 1 was a pretty big twist anyway. But I think he's a great player, and the players really respect him. You can very much see that he's a fantastic leader, and I think that's what makes this team special. Is they have so much cracked aim, and then Cruz, who does basically everything else.
So back to the mandatory Frost glazing. Was Primi a player that Frost found? Am I correct in thinking that, or was he more of a...
So Primi was from my knowledge at least, Primi was a ranked warrior.
Yeah.
He was consistently getting top 1. So the pros all knew about him, but he was just becoming old enough to play. So there was a bunch of teams interested in him. Basically everyone in Pacific was DMing Primi and saying,
it's a Woot/Sayonara type situation in that case. Yeah. Okay.
But from what I know is Cruz flew out to Thailand, met Primi's family, and was like, "Hey, I've made a career with myself doing this. Your son is amazing. He can also have a fantastic career." But Cruz is Thai as well, obviously. So I think his parents said you're allowed to play only if you play for talent, which I know full sense.
All right, okay, so
I'm gonna take that all with a pinch of salt. I some of this is hearsay because it sounds like a fantastic story, so it might be too good to be true. But that's what I heard.
Why are these guys just actually the most cinematic team ever? That's crazy. What, coaches in hospital bed watching VODs, Primi's play? That's crazy. No, honestly, this Primi kid is just... I mean, he's always been unreal. We've known about it for the last 3 years, but fuck me, this guy's good. He's just actually contesting for one of the best players in the world. And I'll get onto the other kind of players in the key player portion, but yeah, I think Primi is just insane, to be honest.
Yeah.
And I think they accept their style and they believe in their style, which you touched on big time. And I think that's a massive thing. I think it's always been the case that you don't have to do all of this Michelin star 3000 IQ thing to win in Valorant. You just need to believe in it, even if it's a shit idea or a shit way of playing. You just need to believe in it. Not saying that that's full sense, but I think once you believe in it and once you have that kind of shared vision, I think it's a lot easier. I think you see that with this.
I mean, the thing about the switching the roles around the world is really interesting because, like I said, I reviewed this thing quite a lot during the regular season. I wasn't aware of the changes going into playoffs particularly, but that makes a lot of sense. We've had to shift around roles for Leviathan. I mean, there was a thing I noticed with Leviathan playing Cypher where he kind of does play a little bit not going out enough. He plays off sides. We'll talk about this a little bit more actually in the fracture section because it still shows up there. But yeah, it's an interesting laundry list of stuff in terms of adjustments. Let's move on to talk about the best map now. So I've decided that it's a little bit hard to sort of judge, to be fair, because this team did seem to change dramatically coming into playoffs. Like there was a bit of transformation there. So across the entirety of the season, there isn't really, I would say, a massive standout map, but I think you still probably have to give it to Pearl, right? So their record on Pearl: 13-6 against DFM, 13-9 against ROQ, 5-13 against T1. They got completely destroyed on the map. Come back into playoffs, they make a composition change, role switch, blah blah blah. They're on the Phoenix Jet twice now. 13-9 against T1 and 10-13 against PRX. I believe this was their pick.
That was the final.
Yeah, in the final, this was their first pick in the best of 5. But yeah, their map wife, I would say, it's hard to judge. On paper, it looks quite surprisingly thin, particularly after they lose Bind, I think. But their Pearl's good, right? Now, building up the Valor Plant. The full sense approach, I would say it's pretty, like, it works perfectly on this map. Like, this is in terms of their attacking philosophy in particular, because there's another point. Like, I also noticed a thing where their attack is great, their defense is a lot more hit and miss, right? But the philosophy can basically be, until attack can be summed up as possible, right? Contact up everywhere, contact up here, contact up here, contact here a lot. Just walk, 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 walk. Get to the line, get to the line, get to the line. Bam, pop out, flashes, blah, 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 all this way up. Just take everything, basically. You've taken all this space for walking, therefore you can take all this space afterwards by just running into it. Like, jumping past every single close angle you could possibly play, turning every single fight into a 50-50 at best for the defending team. That's kind of the key to how this team plays. And obviously a lot of teams were able to really exploit there was a thing I noticed. I think teams started picking this up towards the end of the split when Neon was still kind of being played on this map, which obviously we'll see after the nerfs to an extent, right? But there was like the mini boot play, basically, which was blah, 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 I'm in your spawn now, I'm going to play the whole round from your spawn, do something about it, right? This was kind of how teams started playing Pearl on attack, and because you could just jump past a million angles and get to that. Obviously, this is the thing. Even when they were playing Neo, I don't think they were really doing a lot of this. They were a lot more grouped. They're not really a team that takes a solo time, that takes a solo space like that. And the macro overall is unexciting, but the shooting is really good, and the micro in terms of how they move, what angles they choose to skip, basically, where they're aiming their flashes, all this sort of stuff when they're going onto sites, all really, really, really good. I mean, this is like Pearl. It's what Pearl macro is also like for a lot of teams, to be fair, where it's like you can elevate Pearl macro on attack to a certain level. Like G2, best Pearl team in the world, in my opinion. They do a lot of really interesting stuff around mid, like with how they play mid. But I mean, you remember we always call this we call this the liquid style, right? Where it's like just ping pong back between two sites over and over again, right? And just wait for an opening to come and just walk into the opening and just take everything, right? I think they do. We always made fun of this, right? Of this ABAV. We call it liquid because I don't even know which iteration of liquid roster it was particularly doing this. Maybe it was all of them, to be fair.
They were all just likable, mate. The way they played, like the way Liquid Valorant. I loved most of the people on most of the teams, by the way. But the way Liquid Valorant played Valorant for a long time was like, and they would win. That's what would annoy me. They would do these things where it's like, what the fuck are they doing? But they would just win, you know. So
yeah. But this is, they're not doing anything exciting in the macro. The one thing they do really well in the macro, which most teams don't, is they are really good at working connector. They're really good at basically IDing util here, skipping past the util, putting down stuff for it, getting past, walking out, and just getting out, because this is so hard to defend at this point, right? Because you can just always screw it. You can be here, you're going to die because we're going to bombard you with Astro util, we're going to bombard you with Phoenix flashes, you're going to die in here, you're not going to do anything from here, you're not going to do anything from here, and we're going to take this spawn, so there's no retake for you unless you full flank, basically, right? I think it's interesting to be on a side note here, to be fair, that we kind of see them stay up. We haven't seen much split from them. They banned it in finals because this is probably the map that is the most in the pool now, which is the most conservative to sort of play and what makes them good. But I guess maybe and then also they got off of Waylay. They were running the Waylay comp before this, which is like, again, a little bit weird that they wouldn't run that because that seems super, super strong. Maybe they got a plan, who knows? Just thinking in terms of what they're good at and also what's going to be good for them in London, to be fair, because again, the map pool is a little bit awkward for them now, I think. in my
Yeah.
opinion, them losing Bind is a significant deal. I don't think they never really were picking it. They played it. They destroyed T1 on it, but T1 picked it into them. But that was like a natural map that was like, okay, this map should be good for them. They beat DFM on it as well, to be fair. But yeah, this is what makes their best map good, and it's like it works well with this style because it is just it's very grouped, very contacty. You don't really see too many weak side roams. You don't see too many. I mean, they get a lot of value out of the fade on the weak side, to be fair, on a lot of maps, but it's not like a natural. It's like not like a mass spider thing. It's a lot of like 4-1-5-0 concepts. So yeah, I don't know what you guys think.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, like, also just as like a look ahead, they play Foot in their first game, which I think is going to be an absolute monster of a game because I think Foot play almost exactly like this as well, where it's so contact heavy. And the reason they can get away with this kind of contact burst style, like, yeah, they play a lot of double duelists, so it naturally fits, obviously, but they are the scariest team in the world to peek into. If you decide, oh, I'm going to go and get some info and I'm not going to use the util, there's a very real chance there are 4 Thai kids on the other side who will snap to your head in an instant. Like it feels hard to beat in that moment, and that's why they get away with it a lot.
Mate,
I
them
think
against Foot is a prison Valorant match, by the way. That is
it's
going to
go
be
crazy. That
that
game.
is that is a bar brawl match if I've ever seen.
It's gonna go all 3 maps and it'll be done in 30 minutes. That's the way I see this being done. But I think yeah, I mean I like how they structure their attacker sides. This is what we were talking about before, where they keep it mostly very simple. And I think, you know, when you're talking about comps with all the waylay and stuff like that, I think that's a great move for them. But I think they stick with things like this because it's very simple. It lets Primi play that jet, which is where he's at the best. And also, I think you got to shout out Jit Boys a little bit in this team, and especially it feeds into how they like to play on attack as well. Is in the Neon meta at least, he went from being the like Sentinel IGL in kickoff to now he's your Neon guy. But he's like a hardcore supportive Neon. He knows his job. His job isn't beef. You know, he's not Danby. He's not trying to go crazy with it. His job is to, I'm gonna go run in, tank all of this util so Primi can kill 4 people. And that's why their bursts were so powerful. They would trade incredibly well. They were not, you know, like you said, they're not stopped by util. This is a team that will just jump through. They will go through the angles they shouldn't go through. They'll fight you in places that they shouldn't fight you. And that's what makes them so scary. And especially on this attacker side, when they're allowed to set the tempo, when they're the ones who kind of have to make you guess a little bit more, that's absolutely when they're at their best.
So do you remember when we played, it was last game for us of playoffs in 2023, Vitality versus Foot, and we played them on Lotus, and the entire thing was they're basically going to do this all the time. We had to, they're going to just skip over every angle, going to disrespect us. We had to figure out a way to sort of deal with it, and then we just didn't. We looked like 9-3 on the defense.
These teams, mate, like Foot is a really good example currently and always before this team. They're the kind of teams where the reason they don't beat like the big boys is because the big boys are generally a bit too confident for this shit to work. But these are the kind of teams where once they win 1 or 2 rounds in the way they win it, you start feeling like you get tilted, and then you also feel claustrophobic because the things they're doing make no sense. So there's no pattern recognition within the things they're doing, right? So you can't really, the player's not going to step up and be like, oh, they're doing this and that means this. It's like, no, the guy just like ran through 2 smokes and banged me in the head for no reason, like while I had an arrow.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that is the most tilting thing to ever play against, by the way. It makes you like genuinely just feel like everything's shit. And that's why these teams are really good. And it's not to discredit their style, by the way. I actually, this is how I started in Valorant with Honk. We used to be like this as well, where it's just murder of Valorant, mate.
Yeah. I think it definitely makes them one of the scarier teams to have to go against. And I think this like attacking style, I think to beat a team like Foot, you have to be able to shoot as hard as them. I think they're a team where on paper it feels like you have the answer. Because it only takes someone with half a brain to watch the VOD and you go, what? They're just contact bursting. It's 4-0, it's 4-1, 5-0 every round. You go, well, we can stop this. Of course we can stop this. And you come up with an answer on paper. But I feel like this is exactly the kind of team where the answer on paper doesn't translate. Because you'll do some kind of B long trap on Pearl, for example. And you have all the util in the perfect spots, but your guys swing out and they're just all crouched there. They're sat there, they dome you all in the head, and you go, well, our perfect textbook answer hasn't worked, so now what do we do? And then that's when you crumble, and that's when they get the momentum. And that's why they're so scary.
So it just reminds me of that famous Mike Tyson quote where he's like, "Everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face," right?
Exactly. That's the
Which
scene.
is like,
Absolutely.
and I can tell you, as when you're coaching against a team like this, and as you said, you have like this, bro. It's every single time as well where you're like, okay, this is easy. I know how to beat them, and then you tell your team so confidently, yeah, I know how to beat them, and then they'll just do that one thing, and you're sitting in the coaching booth like, run it again, like, oh, you take a pause, guys, you just need to do this, and then it still doesn't work, and then you're sitting there and you start overthinking, like, okay, wait, maybe it's this, and you're putting so much thought into this solution. It's not even that. It's just, again, as you said,
everyone has a plan until they get Primi peaked.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like I've seen that kid do some monstrous things, some truly awful things, and it just becomes so hard to scheme him out. Like, I mean, if we want to talk about the defender side a little bit now as well, one thing I saw them do a bunch of times on Pearl is Primi's on the jet. Primi's job is be long, and then you have 4 players in like the other half of the map, because you basically present the attacking team with 2 options. Either you come into Primi or you attack into the 4 of us, and there's no right answer there, because the one guy you're running at is Primi, and it's like if he's in this position, even like the amount of times I've seen him get like droned off this angle, but he doesn't leave. He's so unafraid of utility. Like they're like a Teo drone will run at him, and he hangs on till the last possible second, and he always gets one in that situation and lives, and it's just horrible. It's horrible to play.
That's why the meta for Santiago sucked so much, because the way Yori was tuned basically meant it, and like Neon was tuned, turned every duelist player into Primi, basically.
Yeah.
They were all bad spots.
Also, a thing specifically with Pearl, some other maps and some other positions as well, but specifically with Pearl again, which is why I can understand why a team like Global got smoked and then a team like PRX smoked them, which is, if you're like a coach's team where coach is running it and coach is making a lot of the structure and leading a lot of the vision, and he's made this a default where, okay, we just need to drone him out here, and then the guy just ignores the drone. I'm telling you, as a player, like when you're playing that, you're like, wait, what the fuck's going on? Why did he just ignore the drone? And then he bangs one of you out, and then, like, it's the most tilting thing ever, basically. Whereas PRX, that they invented that shit. They invented the we don't give a fuck what you're doing. So obviously it's harder against them, right? Yeah.
Yeah, like I've seen the man be like drone tagged, reconned, and he's in the astral pool, and he's still getting one, and it's like, okay, boys. Well, at this point, we just got to GG out. Then it's over, is it?
There was one round I remember where they did do that. I think they even said it after that they were avoiding him. I don't remember which team it was, but then they avoid Primi and then they run into the 4 and actually win the round on the 4.
Yeah.
And then in your head, you're like, okay.
Yeah, I mean, the only other guy I think you consistently have that feeling against is Aspas, but we also, to be fair, we figured out when we were playing against Aspas in
Isn't it more different though with Aspas, because he's not even going to peek the drone? He's going to be in like CT or some shit, and then he's going to peek on correct timing after like 3 of his mates.
Well, I mean, the thing with him is he's gonna take less space, but he's gonna be on like some weird fucking off angle, basically. Like he's gonna like know exactly how you peek angles, you know exactly how you're gonna peek into stuff, and then he's gonna kill you off that. Like someone like Primi is just gonna like sit there, somehow bait out you till kill 1, get back to here and keep keeking, right? With Aspas, it's like, no, he's like, for some reason he's on a pixel on here where he sort of realized that he can expose the guy who's coming to here, but he can't expose the guy who's coming to here, and then he kills you off of that. But it's the same sort of principle with regards to the entire team then just plays for 1 off of him, and it's like, what the fuck do we do? Because like even if we somehow go street, he'll somehow be set up and like he'll shift his angle by 2 things to the left, and he'll be like, oh, now he's got the angle to the street. It's like, okay, bro, what do you want me to do at this point? Like at some point.
Actually, I'm very excited for them against Foot. Actually, that's gonna, because I want to see basically when what is it, when an unstoppable force meets an immovable object or something. It's literally just gonna be who peaks the hardest.
I mean, to be the one thing I feel that's a little bit different about Foot, to be fair, is that they will take really weird timings, like on solos, which
Mate, if you're taking weird timings, and then Primi's like having a cage fight in B-long.
Yeah, so that'll be interesting, but yeah, it's going to be a very interesting first match. I'm going to not lie. I mean, this is the thing with Fulton. I feel like they're a team where it's like they can like take some shot games, but also I feel like they're the team that might be the biggest, the highest chance to lose to China, basically. I could like see that being the case.
I could see it. I could see it as well. Because China, do you remember the FPX teams that would also play like this? Yeah. Just do crazy things.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. So let's move on.
Let me turn the light on real quick.
Okay, worst map. We've chosen Fracture for this. they've played not too much of this, to be fair. Well, they played it 4 times. 13-6 against Zeta, 3-13 versus RRQ, 37 versus DRX, 10-13 versus PRX. 63% win rate on attack, which is by far the highest we've seen for a worse map. It's higher than most of the best maps. 40% on defense. Now, they are running a pretty standard comp.
Same as Pearl, I think, no?
Yeah. Let's get it up for the plants. Yeah, they are running pretty much the standard comp at this point, which is Neon, which is Phoenix, which is the Cypher. This is the one map where, well, this is in Haven, where they're actually keeping, I believe, is he playing on? Oh,
Yeah, he's on Cypher.
Yeah, they switched him around in Haven even, but he is still on Cypher on this. Leviathan is still on Cypher on this map.
Yeah.
Boomstone. So, like, super standard comp. There is a thing on this map where on attack, if you can't fan out, if you can't take a lot of space and like basically play free openings, so you play like something like, let's say this, like if you can't like basically provide these options, it's a little bit weird to play, right? And as we said, for the entire thing with Four Senses, they play this super tight game where they play a lot of 4-5 man contact, they play heavy on that sort of stuff. They still do some fracture as well. And this is awkward for Leviathan, because like in terms of flanks as well on this map, because you kind of need the Cypher to be, you often want it completely opposite, like you want to have something like this. You want it to like cam here, you want it to play down here, basically control both these areas when you are playing for 2 openings rather than 3. And he will regularly run, yeah, it's just, and Kilo was pretty good in terms of the weak fade intel. It's an awkward fit, to be fair. 63% win rate on attack. It has generally worked for them. The problem, and this is like a highlight how their problem on defense, and problem on defense a lot of maps, they fall apart on defense, right? And something I noticed this looking at the Pearl, and this is kind of very much a thing that has continued since then. So I'm going to show this round here. This was in the PRX series. So, Full Sun series. Look at the setup they've got here in this round. This is a thing he does every single time, by the way. So basically, Leviathan on Cypher he'll play one side of the map, he'll cam the other side, and then put util down on the other side. Usually won't play on it himself. And he's playing offsite still. So if we up here, he's playing like this super passive angle, basically. So he's just playing to retake either way, right? And just have maximum stuff rotations. And to be fair, this is what they do as well. They take a lot of these 3-1-1 fights where they just sort of contact up into an area, try and fight here. But look how they just completely lost B-side by doing this. I don't even know if they might even win this round, to be fair, but this is like such a bad round from a macro perspective. And this is kind of what you see over and over and over again with this team, right? They're doing these weird defensive setups. They're doing like Leviathan is very passive. I mean, it's particularly when he's on the Sentinel, his gun is not out, right? You mentioned this thing before with regards to Cruz trying to get in a position where he has his gun out more often. You can see when he's playing Cypher there.
Yeah.
Gun ain't out. He is starting in CT, and that is so bad. That is so, like, unequivocally bad, right?
Yeah.
And granted, I don't think, in any case, I don't think that's the right way to play Fracture. I think it's very hard to play Fracture from a retake heavy, CT heavy perspective. But like, they're committing 3 people to site where his cam is. And there was another round I hear ahead as well that I wanted to highlight. Which this was a timeout round, which is interesting for this being a timeout round, right? And this round doesn't go particularly badly for them. Same rounds?
Wait, this is the same round.
Yeah,
as last time.
Yeah, the same round. Okay. So this is the thing. This is kind of the thing I think with a team that is so heavy on the movement and on the contact, and that's kind of how they're good on attack, and then how they have to then play into defense, right? You can do these 3-man, 4-man pushes. You can pick guys off. All that's cool, right? But because your strength so relies on being grouped up and like jumping tight angles, getting value off of that, there is a thing also where you can't be as that sort of regression, which works really well on attack, which is sort of skipping over these angles, like basically running in space, all that sort of stuff, doesn't really work on defense, I'd argue, particularly on Fracture, because so much of doing well on Fracture, and you'll all know this, right? It's stuff like this. It's stuff like, okay, we've got these 3 guys on the A main. The mains that really matter on Fracture are like here and here, basically, right? These 2, not irrelevant, but not so important. It's kind of hard to win around from control over these. You can win around from control over these one of these two areas, right? But if your fight, the way you're using util into, you consider how this sort of is laid out, unless you're doing perfectly with your, Raise Nade would be a famous one, Phase sort of util would be a famous one, Neon Stuns, there's like a high skill thing of using this correctly on these sort of areas. If you can't get that aggression right, and their full sense is like 2-3 man plays on defense. From what I've seen, they're not really great at it. They're not great at like using util to basically take these space and then follow up onto that. They kind of have to send the free bodies in. That's like a huge problem for playing defense, because it means you're struggling. Like you're struggling to, if you have to take everything with free basically, and you have to take it with contact, you just lose tempo, and the enemy team just sort of starts running around you. And that's kind of what we've seen in a lot of these games, to be honest.
Yeah. I mean, I think you summed it up perfectly, to be honest. I think the map is just not a stylistic fit for them. There's too many lanes, and the control is too important, where they just can't make the magic happen that they normally make happen. Like, we spoke about it on Pearl, where the whole idea is you can leave that Jet alone towards B, and he can do his job, and the others can hold A. Because, if you go B along, he's there, and if you go R, he can get there, and he can stop you. But here, they can shoot you in the back of the head if you're missing all the control, which they just don't have. I think, the only way a Fracture could be a fantastic map for them is if they're magically allowed to play with 6 people, and then they can have 2-3 man little bubbles, and then they'll be amazing. But outside of that, I think they're left alone on islands too much. It's just not a good fit from them. And also compositionally, they can't make it work like they normally would. It's stereotypically a Raze map, but they don't feel like they can play Raze in it for some reason. So they're jamming the Phoenix here for Primi, which sorry, well, it was it for Primi in this one? Yeah, it was. It was Primi on the Phoenix. I don't like. I think again that's about keeping it simple for Primi. I don't like Phoenix on the map personally, to be honest. And I feel like I wish they just let him play Jet. I think that this is a map where they should play Jet Raze. But even then, it doesn't fix the stylistic problems that they have. I think you hit the nail on the head.
I have nothing that I just agree with what you said, Troy.
Yeah. So it's good that they sort of recognize they have a problem on defense. They're trying to make changes, but yeah, this stuff like Fracture. This doesn't project out to a great map pool for them, I'd say, in terms of how it's going to work at this tournament, because I think Breeze is going to be super important as well. They Appel is really, really good. There's quite a few maps where there's more maps where you describe them as open and closed, I think, at this tournament in general. So that is going to be a concern for them, I think, coming in, but they are at least conscious that they need to make changes on defense, and they are doing something towards that end at the end of the day, right? So all good.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
yeah. Go.
I was going to say, so where does that mean you put them then in with London, with the expectations?
We'll see in a second.
Okay.
First we have to go through the formality of saying key player.
Yes. Oh, sorry.
Who do we think the key player might be?
Should we all say it on 3? Yeah, I mean, it's Primi. It's so open and shut for them. This guy is like, he's an absolute beast. I think this is someone he's getting a lot of hype now. But as an avid Pacific watcher, they've kind of paid me to do that. So I'm so confident he's the guy. He's an amazing player when he's at his best, but then equally, like, if he doesn't fire, this whole team falls apart. Yeah. Everything is done to make him feel comfortable, to let him have the best case scenario in every single round. So if he's not on, then it's a bad day. We saw that in the grand final against Paper X. Primi had probably the worst day we've ever seen from him, realistically, and I think that's got a lot of people doubting now. But I think you have to take that with a pinch of salt a little bit. He's against Paper X, who are also just beasts. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, he has to show up in London, or this team gets absolutely whitewashed.
I'm going to be a contrarian.
Of course you are.
Oh, well, I guess that's the correct word. Just to make myself look smarter, of course, right? I think it's Cruz. And I mean, here's why. I think it's Cruz. First of all, you added initial. I probably would have said Primi until you said the stuff you said. No, I already had the Cruz in my head. But here's the thing, guys. There are a lot of players that are good, and there have been a lot of players that are good. As good as Primi, probably there's been players on that level that he is on right now in relative terms, right? that doesn't always actually guarantee you're going to do well as a team, especially when you're in the kind of team he is in. Of course, he's a massive part, and without him, they are not going to London. Don't get me wrong. However, I think in terms of key players, I think it's actually Cruz, because number one, the guy is, every time I've heard this guy speak, super well spoken, super smart. I've never heard a bad thing about this guy in terms of personality. He's obviously the leader of the team, right? I'm not mistaken in saying that.
Yeah.
And even the fact, for example, that you said he had the foresight to be like, look, we're not doing this. This is how we're going to treat this. Without that, you don't make lands, mate, and you don't win games. You can have players who drop 50 and you will not, I mean, you guys know this. There's a lot of players who have had insane performances and their team still doesn't qualify to shit until they eventually, have a guy like Cruz. You need the guy like Cruz. And people like Cruz are a lot rarer than people like Primi. And that's not an insult to Primi. That is me bigging up Cruz. I promise you, there is a lot of teams that if they had someone like that, they would do a lot better in EMEA, every single region, EMEA, NA, and people like that. He kind of almost reminds me of an old school CS guy, and maybe he was, to be fair. I'm not familiar with his past. Where having that one enigmatic, one charismatic guy who kind of helps people in that moment is so fun. I wish I had a guy like that my whole career, basically, and they're worth their weight in gold. The fact that, for example, he's able to say, look, we have this problem that is, we can't play defense because we're not smart enough for it. I'm going to go play Sentinel and I'm going to fix the issue myself. And then instantly they get to basically the finals. That's massive, right? And that shows, for example, the fact that he's able to do that. And I don't think there is someone else in that team that's able to do that outside of maybe the coach. Again, not familiar with his work. And the fact that he is, and again, the guy who's going to this and that means a lot to me. And I think players like that, and Cruz obviously is qualified to lands before Premier as well, remember. It's, well, actually, I'm not sure about that. That might be capped, but I'm pretty sure he has.
No, I think it was X10 or Xerxia, like way back in the day. There was always Tyrosses there.
So we're talking about, that kind of guy, and I think that kind of guy is massive, man, especially for a team like this where they're a local team, they're a Thai team, which is obviously not, a massive region or a massive country necessarily, especially in esports, outside of maybe like a Dota or League, I'm not too familiar with. Of course, you haven't had a lot of success in Thai esports. So being that guy who is almost ushering in all of these kids and taking all of these kids by the hair and saying, look, this is how it's going to be. And he's super well spoken and super confident when he says things. And Frost fucking loves this guy, which is probably a decent sign, right? I think for me, it's him. And Premier is obviously insane. And without him, they don't go to the LAN. But I'm also saying without Cruz, I also don't think they go to the LAN. I do think, and I stand behind this, that it's harder to find a guy like Cruz than it is to find a guy like Premier.
Yeah, I think Cruz is a good shout. I mean, we've had this joke before. We talked about with the talents. Like, if you had to hire, if you were working a normal job, right, you had to hire one player, who would you hire? And all of us said Cruz, because he seems like he's the most like grown-up adult player that I feel like we have. He's so responsible, he's so smart, and he truly is that father figure. And like you say, that is actually quite a rare find in esports. Esports is obviously dominated by these kids that are incredibly cracked, and they have plenty of that. Yeah, but he truly does feel like he can do pretty much everything else. So I agree. I just think the only reason I didn't pick him is, for me, I think he'll be able to do all that stuff at London. It's not new to him. He's experienced enough. He's smart enough that he can do his job. It's Primi that I don't know if he can do it.
Yeah. I kind of agree with that Primi's performance will basically decide how good they will be. But I think this is a misconception as well, that a lot of people think these like insane IGLs or insane leaders need to be this like really tactical, really well thought out. It's not that. It's having someone who can just make that one decision that's correct, that one decision that will change your trajectory as a team. And for me, he's that guy, right? And I'll ask you this even, and of course it's a theoretical, but if he doesn't say, okay, I'm going to do the Sentinel thing, do you guys still think they make playoffs after what you saw in the regular season?
I think they make playoffs. I think they
do they make it to London? I mean,
oh no, absolutely not. He caught it well. I mean, I think even the fact like we saw them in kickoff without Cruz, they had Ty instead of Cruz, and it was night and day difference. Like him coming back made a world of difference. So I think that's a very fair pick as well.
Okay, so let's move on to expectations. What are we thinking?
All that being said about how great they are, I think they're getting bagged out with Bruce. I
feel like. So, I mean, again, pinch of salt and Pacific bias, right? But I think I've said this time and time again about Full Sense, where I find them near impossible to place because when they're on their day, they look absolutely unstoppable. If they hit peak form and like it's not just Primy that's popping off, because we've seen massive games from Killua especially. He looks unreal when he's sharp. Leviathan, even in that grand final, he was the one keeping them in it. If they all hit their ceiling, no one can touch them. They look absolutely unstoppable. But equally, if they show up at 70% of what they can do, then it becomes very, very shaky. So I think I want to give it, in my mind, similar to GE, where I think they should be making it out of the group at a minimum. And then I want to see them test against those stronger teams. But equally, like, I'm not going to be mad if you say they're getting hardcore grouped, because I can totally see like a multiverse where they don't win a round. Like that's the duality of these guys in my mind.
Yeah,
I'm gonna make a bold claim now, actually.
Okay.
And but it's also one of those bold claims where you like the way you phrase it means you have a lot of outs. So I think
the best kind.
Yeah, of course. I'm very good at those. I think full sense. The first map of the tournament will decide how their tournament's going to go. If they get smoked by Foot, it's 0-3. If they smoke Foot, I can see them maybe contesting for playoffs at that point. I think it's basically feast or famine with them. It's like for that first map, if they smoke Foot, show up and smoke Foot, then we might have a conversation, right? But if Foot show up and play with them, then it's not happening basically.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing. I feel like they're a massive upset team, but at the same time, looking at how these groups, I mean, the funny thing is there aren't so many teams that would be massive upsets in this group stage at the same time, right? Like it's this time round. This isn't like this choice isn't as stacked as it was at Santiago.
It's also like the peaking stuff that you have to be really confident for that, and it's very easy being confident against players you've played against in the same region for a while versus when like Chronicle shows up or Durka shows up or Heretics show up. I guess they're not going to play against Heretics till playoffs, but until one of these teams show up and they're about that life basically and they're about that scrap, then it's a bit different,
Yeah. Looking realistically, I think if they make playoffs, it's a good tournament for them. I think probably they're gonna be 1-2 and out. I mean, there could even be a case where they're the team that I think out of all the teams in the tournament are like the most likely to like be a G2 or Heretics, but also a team that's most likely to just lose to XLG or DRG. Yeah, that's the duality of this team, right? And I think if you add that together, I think I can't really put them above. I think playoffs would be a good accomplishment for them.
So, withstanding that, of course, you are related to one of the coaches in Foot.
Yeah.
Who's winning them versus Foot? That's a better question.
Man, I think that game is absolutely crazy. I wish I was like smart enough to make a firm call on it. The thing
I
is,
think it's going to be about like whoever wakes up and has a better breakfast, basically. By the way,
so in my mind, Leviathan. What I'm talking about? I'm thinking of Leviathan, the player. Full Sense have Primy. Primy is the guy for them. They work everything around Primy. Foot have Sop and Zeus. They have that like 1-2 punch, which kind of do what Primy does. So if they're both activated on Foot win. If one of them is off, Primy will run the show.
I can give you a quick tour into the Turkish mind, being a Turkish man myself, and I know how these players think because I've been in teams with some of them even. This is not a negative thing. It's just we are very passionate-blooded and hot-blooded people. We'll show up and say, "Yeah, we're gonna smoke these guys. They're dog shit, right?" Yeah. And if they win the first 3 rounds, it's finishing 13-4 or something like that, in my opinion. But the way Turks also work is if the player you've spent the whole day basically saying is shit and is not good enough, and basically you've gassed yourself up. If he starts shooting back and doing these things and like shooting your body and do it really tilts Turkish players, man. And if that happens, then I can see the world where basically Full Sense win.
I think if I want to get firm on it, I'll say Foot, because I think the way you beat Full Sense is you have to beat them at their own game. You have to show that they can't peek you or that you can peek into them and you're not afraid. You're not afraid of this little death ball that they have. If you show that you can do that, then that's how you beat them. That's what Paper Rex did in the final, but that's why Full Sense were able to roll GE because GE were too schemy, but they couldn't beat Paper Rex because Paper Rex shot them. So I think if Foot show up and shoot them, Foot will win. So that's my bet there. But I think they can still make it out the group. I'd like to. I think their level on average is good enough to make it out the groups in my mind. But I would agree that's a good tournament for them if they're able.
Cool. Okay. Can we cut this for just a second? And finally, the number 1 seed out of the Pacific region, we have our boys, PRX. Route to the tournament. Better group stage than they usually do, to be fair, I would say. Like, quite clean. 2-1 Nongshim, 1-2 Gen.G, 2-0 Secret, 2-0 GE, 2-0 DRX. Get into playoffs. First game as top seed. 1-2 to Global. Have to go on this mad run back to make it to the event to that point, which is, to be fair, what they seem to do every single Masters 1.
They're just so good at it. It's getting obnoxious at some point.
Yeah. But 2-1 over KRX, 2-1 over T1. Both of these not particularly close, by the way. Like, they're not close 2-1s. And then 3-0,
I do also
3-0.
want to say, these guys have low-key also been terrorizing Pacific because they do this consistently where they get banged down to lower bracket and then they just fuck everyone else. Like, imagine if you're like,
it
I
just
don't know,
ruins your
RRQ
lower
or-
bracket.
Yeah, imagine if you're like RRQ or T1 and like you realistically actually have quite a decent chance in lower bracket and then just PRX spawns in front of you for like literally, and then they decide they're going to be the ghosts. So it's just like, why do they do this every time? It's like, it's almost like they enjoy it. Like they want to fuck people's tournaments up and make sure that some teams don't qualify.
That's it, man. Like I swear, they need to go to the lower bracket to remember that like they can lose if they don't try, and then they activate. Like I've said this on other podcasts as well. People like to pretend that being a Paper Rex fan is like hard or that it's like scary because we're in the lower bracket. What if we don't make it? It's like you always make it. Like let's stop pretending. You'll be there at the event because you're always at the event. Like they're so good at doing that. They drop to the lowers and they find it like a different level every time.
Mate, it's like they're fucking mocking us as well. They do it every time. It's like, and you just know in your heart as well, if they really wanted to, they would beat these teams in upper bracket.
I mean,
it's just like they don't check in until lower bracket. It's basically
having played them 3 times at Santiago. I think there is a degree to which like this consistent thing is because they were willing to take like these big swings in these upper bracket games, and then once they get to lower bracket, okay, well they tighten the fuck up and then they just win anyway. But like they're willing to take, like, I mean, obviously the big example of this would our series against them, the second series, right? So first series, obviously we lose 1-2. We win this if they if Riot don't fuck us. I'm tired of pretending that's not the case, right? If we don't have to change it midnight to a different opponent, and we would have beat them in that series, I think. But
that one was also the ultimate mockery, right? Where the one team you don't want to play against with zero prep is PRX.
Yeah, and they're like asleep at the same time, like when they had to prep. But and that destroyed our entire tournament. But that's a rant for another time. But I'm tired of pretending that wasn't a factor at all. It was clearly a factor. But in any case, they played well, sure. Second series, we beat them 14-12, 13-11, right? And the big thing they do with their series, and they take this swing, is they change comps and everything because they kind of think, well, I think in their head the idea was, well, this team is so reliant on prep that we are just going to throw off their prep and we're going to play them that way. And they do that, and I'm in the coaching booth. It doesn't work because the comps they're playing are pretty obvious. I just call out everything they're going to do. Basically, we take like 2 timeouts at round 2 just to call all this stuff out. Doesn't work, right? And then obviously they come back and they destroy us in lower bracket finals. Fine. But what they were clearly doing in that upper series, and they were taking a risk while they had the capacity to take the risk, while they had the opportunity to take it, because, well, fuck it, we'll just go to low bracket anyway, right? And they know they're going to go in low bracket, they're going to be fine, they're going to, like, they know how to play tie up from that point onwards. They always make it a little bit close, like they lost to Rotor Gamers, for example, which was funny as fuck. Like, they actually made that series close for like a second, and then they just destroyed them on the third map. Same with G2, blah blah blah. But I think that's why PRX is doing that, because they are not afraid to take those big swings in upper upper bracket games, in finals. I think they maybe overdo it in finals, which is why they, but
almost some finals.
Yeah, but
are they the team that has made the most finals, by the way, in
Valorant? They might be.
Better way of saying this: the most finals and lost, but most finals and lost, because they had champs. They had Copenhagen. They had 2 finals last year, I want to say. Toronto and champ? No, not champs, actually.
Yeah, I'm looking at the list now. So they've lost 3 international finals.
Okay,
in total.
it's not that many, actually.
But that is still the most out of any team.
And Fnatic last year.
Fnatic have lost 3 now as well. Fnatic have won 2 though. PaperX have won 1. I mean, it's a small side.
No, mate. It would be Fnatic because they also had the iconic Iceland one, right? So it would be Fnatic actually who's made
No,
the West finals.
they're both tied on 3. So Paper X, Station Masters, Champions Los Angeles, Master Santiago. Fnatic.
Are we not counting EWC?
If we're not counting, we're not counting EWC for this.
Okay.
Then it's tied. If EWC, then that breaks the tie. But yeah, it's obviously it's been a tendency with them historically. But I haven't played against them now. I've played 3 times that tournament. Haven't been World Master from Paper X. I get it. Why they take these risks? Why they always fall down from upper bracket? Because they take these risks. They take these risks that like 70% of the time are not going to work out, but they're fine doing that because they just want to go for a lower bracket anyway, and it's just not a problem for them because of the resilience they have as a team and that mental strength. But yeah, they did the same thing again this time, just to eliminate all the Korean teams and then go to the tournament.
Do you guys also think that maybe there's a world where they do so good in lower bracket because they also are much more willing to risk things, whereas other teams are never like when you're in lower bracket, especially teams clench up a lot. Whereas do you think maybe because they're so confident, they're doing their thing most of the time that they're better in these lower brackets.
They're very good at taking
lower brackets.
Their risks, like a lot of their in-game risks, they're very good at taking calculated risks in terms of how they use ults, in terms of that sort of stuff as well, right? I think, to be fair, the biggest thing with them is just you never want to go into a game. You never want to go into a game which is 9-9 against Paper X because you will lose every single time.
Yeah.
Like you just will because they don't need timeouts really to do any of their stuff. Their ult usage in these late round situations in these late half situations is ridiculous. So they just like I used to say on NRG that we were like the kings of Oak. We were like 11-2 in overtime and 1-score games, right? 13-11s. Paper X are the king of the 13-10 and the 13-9. They will just get to 9-9 and just destroy you. They'll just completely seal you out of the game. No coaching intervention required, no timeouts, and no resources being spent on it. Just ridiculous ult usage, ridiculous like gun rounds, and stuff they've just pulled out and that you can't possibly account for. That's what makes them great. So
I mean, I feel like I know this is an analytical podcast, but I feel like you guys will agree with me on this. They have so much aura that it's hard to play into them.
Yeah.
Like players freeze up against Paper X because it's Paper X. Because they're so relaxed in situations they shouldn't be relaxed in. Because they always have this deep-seated belief that they're going to win anyway. And if your guys don't have that, if they don't have the aura to match the guys on Paper X, that's how they get away with so much of this stuff. Like, when you look at, like, a group draw, or, when the bracket will get seeded for London, I swear to God, the one team everybody is saying, don't put me up against, it's Paper X. Because just in that moment, you see them, your heart drops a little bit because you know that they just have this undefinable quality to always be able to win.
I will never forget, and this is I think there is actually an insane amount of method to the madness, by the way, which is also why there's been a lot of coaches throughout the Valorant history who try to play like PRX, not realizing that they're not PRX, and try to do these things where like, oh, let's PRX do this, and let's do this. I remember there was even a time where teams were trying to practice like PRX. I remember I got told like the PRX practice schedule, and it was like this weird like solo rank day thing, this thing, and then not realizing that wait, we're not PRX, right? But PRX are the team, and I played against them early in the game in scrims as well, where they're the team, and every coach knows this, that you go into scrims, you have this entire scrim plan about what you're going to practice, and then the other team just do the most outrageous things, and every player always says they'll never do that in officials, and PRX are the people who do that in officials. They are the team that actually do that in officials, and then you're like, well, fuck.
And it makes it so hard to get good practice against, because no one can do what they do. So you go into a scrim, you're playing Paper X next, and then some tier 2 teams playing solid fundamental macro Valorant against you, and you're like, no guys, I need you to speed it, I need you to run this down, I need you to peek me, and you just can't get the practice for a team like this. They're so one of one, and that's what makes
it's also when they do this shit so much, you start making ghosts that they're every timing is now a timing, right? So as a coach, you tell your players, look, don't make ghosts. This is something I say a lot. Don't make ghosts. Don't think things can happen if they're very unlikely to happen. Don't always assume the worst, basically. Whereas against PRX, they do so much shit where you're like, eventually you just start seeing the thing, everything. Like I remember when you watch them, you're like, oh, he's going to be behind that corner. And they're just not there. You start like almost fucking yourself up because of how much they're just all over the place, right? Yeah, it's just madness that it's been going for 5 years or 6 years.
It's ridiculous. So moving on to best map for them. This is, I think, pretty objectively, it's Lotus. They are one of the most dominant streaks I think we've seen across all of these regions on a map. This split. So they did have one big loss. They did lose 3-13 to Genji on it, right? After which they changed comp. But 13-6 versus Nongshim, 13-5 versus GRX. Playoffs 13-6 versus Global, they lost that series. 13-4 versus Global, they won that series. 13-9 in finals.
And honestly, for me, that Genji loss barely even counts, man. That whole game was upside down. It was the weirdest game I've ever seen. That's not a series they should ever lose to Genji. When Genji were looking horrible, and they did. I think if you write that one off, which I think is fair to do, given how the rest of the split played out for like both of these teams, this map is just unstoppable for them, and especially with this comp switch, I feel like for me the biggest thing that stands out to me is it's so much agent comfort. I genuinely feel like all 5 of the players are experts on the agent that they're playing on this, and they've played Lotus a billion times. Like, there's nothing you can do that's going to surprise Jing's raise on Lotus. You know what I mean? You just can't catch him out.
So I have a lot to say about this, actually, because they have been playing this, and as you said, they're very comfortable. This is their bread and butter. They've been doing this comp for the last, 5 years, I think, literally. Like, this is their bread and butter. It always has been the Sky, Raze, Jet. And then they'll switch out the Omen for an Astra sometimes. They'll switch out the Vise, of course, for a different Sentinel. But this is their comp. And I remember even at the start of the split strong, I said, when they switched this comp, this is just their bread and butter. They love this comp. And obviously it's a great meta for it. And there is actually method to the madness that I've realized. I'm not going to sit here and analyze the plays they do, because it would be idiotic. A lot of their plays are on the fly. But the method to the madness is the way they get into those positions. Now, here's the thing about Lotus and why it becomes claustrophobic for a lot of teams is because, again, the info lines are super easy to take on this map. It's very easy as a defender to have these lines. And once you have these lines, you cannot be executed on without good rotations. Because, again, if, for example, Jing has this line, again, info line, and the enemy team try to exec or use Util to force him off, the timing for his team to rotate is always correct for him to be able to basically buy enough time, right? And that's why these lines are super important for anyone watching at home. However, it's very easy to take the lines, but it's also extremely easy to push defenders off the lines on attack, because the same way it goes on defense, the same way it is on attack, where basically it's super easy. You have the initial insta peak. It generally favors attackers because attackers can wait, and this is a very viable game plan on Lotus. And we used to play like this, and a lot of teams play like this still, which is we're going to wait for the first 5 seconds, see where they throw Util as defenders, and just react either by retaking the space or by going to the other side. So, for example, if you're attacking and you see Raze Util, Omen Paranoia, Skyflash, okay, the stack is towards A, we can go pressure C, force and over rotate, or just speed up into C, depending on what happened. This is why Viper was so good on this map for so long, is because she could basically allow for that to happen, wall up, and then retake the space quite easily with minimal util usage, right? So this is why teams struggle on defense a lot, is because they get pushed off these lines and they don't retake them, or if they do retake them, they're retaking them with the most eccentric retake ever, where it's Omen Paranoia, Raze nade here, and then it's one guy and you kill the one guy, but they're in C and they have the best fucking post plant ever, basically, right? The difference in PRX is, and the reason they are so fucking good on this map, especially on defense, is because they are not afraid of taking lines that other teams are afraid of. And the best example is Jing and Something are basically always going to play active. They're either going to be together or they're going to be separated. So, for example, they're going to maybe come take a peek out of B. Jing at the same time is going to see what's up on C. And again, they're going to basically force these lines. And if they are met with pressure, the Omen player here, actually I need to check who's actually playing the Omen.
Should be Forsaken.
It is, they switch around so much, mate. It's hard to say at some point. It is Forsaken in this situation. He is, unlike most players in this situation, if there's things going on here, they're not going to take the line. You guys can attest to this. They are afraid of taking this one-on-one because if they die, they will lose the round there and then, right? They are not afraid of this. They take these calculated risks based on what's happening. So, for example, if they peek B and see nothing B, but Jing gets info on C, soft info, this guy is going to peak this every single time, take this line, and then all of a sudden there are 4 people on C when most teams wouldn't not do that, for example. And it looks like PRX is just running around crazily over-rotating, but the method to the madness is that the timings they're taking are all based off of each other. So, for example, this Omen is taking this timing because there is 1 or 2 people out here, nothing here. It's a risk that he's taking this, but it's a nice risk, let's say. Because if he does take this, and he consistently does this, and they consistently do these things, where if they do take these lines, and the A1 is clear, the B1 is clear, it's the easiest B stack ever. And there's a round even from this playoffs run where they do exactly what I'm saying, where basically they peek in front of B. This Omen just what seems like an idiotic peak just peaks, but it's not an idiotic peak because he's doing it based off of intuition and info, basically. He relaxes this line and instantly they're ready for a C trap and instantly they're wiping the enemy team because and most teams are not good at this. Most teams would be naturally afraid of taking these peaks because, again, you don't, as the Omen player, want to get banged out in that situation, right? And that's why they're so good. And on the other side, for example, if this Omen is getting pressured, this time this guy's taking the line, this guy's taking the line, and again, they're doing the same thing, and they're constantly taking these lines almost regardless of what the enemy team is doing, they're going to take the line. They're going to be confident. Sometimes it looks crazy, and sometimes it looks like Forsaken is just taking a troll peek and getting banged out, and which is why we get those PRX moments where Alex is slamming the desk, right? But in reality, what he's doing is very smart, and they have this method to this madness, if that makes sense, right? So that's the number 1 point. The number 2 point is we mentioned this with Heretics, where they're really good at ping-ponging / seesawing, where if they are on attack or defense, they're really good at, for example, contesting this area while they're playing post-plant, right? Not letting the retake happen, but not over-committing, for example. But while they're doing this, they're creating this pressure. Jing knows, for example, okay, I can take this peak because we saw 3 people here, so I'm going to take this 1v1 versus this guy, and I'm going to win the 1v1 because I'm Jing. And they're really good at this 1-2, 1-2, 1-2, 1-2, basically. But another example is, for example, they'll go out to B, consistently take this window peak because, for example, they hear 2 from here and 1 from here, so they think in their head, okay, the other 2 are probably sight on A, so we can take this peak, right? So they're super fucking good at, I need to stop swearing, but they're super good at basically using these small pieces of info and small pieces of intuition that they've gained over the years, by the way, to actually just kill rounds from there. And that is why Lotus especially is super good, because it's almost like a wheelhouse of doing this. Is perfect for this playstyle, which is why it's consistently been one of their best maps. And it's also why they're so good at this comp, because this comp allows them to do these things. Omen as a character is the best smoker you could possibly have of taking these taking the solo space, right? Same with these one. And Sky is and Dava is a big piece of this, by the way. The way he plays is he's just there to basically make sure that the duelists have everything, and then after that he's taking his timing, he's making his play, and after that he's basically playing for himself, right? But that's, I think, kind of the big thing, and that's a consistent thing. It's not about rounds. There's you would hear this a lot where, oh, PRX did this round where they retake here and they have these really pretty things, and most of the time people are overthinking it. It's not that deep. It's actually based on this pattern recognition that they've so incredibly well start to learn basically over their years and realize. So these crazy timings and these, everyone you say PRX is this team, that team, it's actually the way they're playing is genius most of the time, and they are brave enough to basically back it up. But it does also end up in the other way where, for example, they'll get to a finals. And I think the reason they consistently, for example, struggle in finals is because you're living by the sword, dying by the sword. If you have this style, your brain needs to be on. You need to be able to basically constantly be able to register these small patterns, these small information. The 2 people here, meaning that this is going to be empty, for example. The 3 people fighting here means that you can take a 1v1 here, for example. That you rely a lot on basically being on. And it's a lot harder to be on in the finals against a team that probably is very good at that moment, when it's a lot harder to replicate this in that situation, right? Which is why they make it to so many finals, but then also just lose a lot of finals as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the synergy together is just unbelievable. They play so much Valorant together, and people think about PaperX as an aggressive team, and they are, but it's not brain dead, mindless aggression. They know how to play off each other and do it very well. I think when we talk about it in the context of Lotus, of why it's their best map, I think because they're all experts on their agents here, they're so good with their utility. And they're so good in chaos. They've always been amazing in chaos. It's really what they love to do. They want a game to get a little bit messy. And when we talk about Lotus, the A fight is so important. It's been important since the day the map was created. We know on defense, you have to show you can win it. On attack, you have to show you can win it. And I feel like whenever Paper X decide they want A, they know how to win it every single time, no matter what you throw at them, because it turns into a messy situation where they'll come out on top, even if their util isn't as good or as coordinated as yours. And I think that's what makes it truly special. And they know how to sync up so well. The amount of times they're like, like if they want to mix up from what you were talking about, Salah, we see them do like a C trap a bunch of times, but they know how to make it work. And that's the thing. That's what's so beautiful about Paper X is if some teams do a C trap, you feel like it's because the coach sat there in a Valor plant before the game and was like, okay, when they come here, then you flush this and you do this. It's like, no, they just understand each other and they know that they need to do a C trap and they know how to make that work. And that is a credit. Like, I'm not saying Alex is a bad coach because of that. He's a very good coach because he's made that happen over a long amount of time.
A great way of explaining a lot of the things they do, because again, once you realize, at first it looks like the most troll things ever, the things they're doing, by the way. It seems like, it's unrealistic, you won't be able to replicate this, but then once you realize the method to the madness, as I said, it's almost like they got to a point via synergy, via just playing, that you try to get to with structure. The whole point of structure is to be able to do these decisions, but to be able to script them so that you can replicate them, right? That's why the structure thing and teams being, for example, very drilled. It's not because, for example, you think that if you just do something over and over again, it's just going to be correct. It's because you're doing it so that you have the muscle memory down, so that you know the correct decision intuitively, right? And that's why you have so much structure. That's why, for example, when I was coaching teams, they'd be very structured, but the whole point is that you're trying to teach up until a point where you're making the correct decisions because you've practiced them. Whereas they have done the opposite, but they've got so good at it that they are doing it without that structure almost. And it is a structure in itself, if that makes sense. It's almost like a pipe dream to get to where they've gotten. And there's not many teams, I think, in esports, let alone Valorant, that have been able to do that. So it's crazy. But any words from you, Strong?
No, I mean, I'm going to be negative as usual. I'm going to use this as a lead into the worst map section because I think there actually is an interesting point here to be made. Again, this is not a discredit at all to so worst map is Breeze, to be clear.
Yeah.
13-4 versus Secret, 13-5 versus ERX, so they're capable of winning this map still. 9-13 versus Global, 5-13 versus DRX, 13-8 versus T1. 51% attack, 58% on defense, 53% total. Not a bad record overall, but this is like this is the only map where they've kind of like been beat hard, and they've been beaten hard on both sides of the map. Because they got destroyed on defense by KRX, they got destroyed on attack by Global. So let's go through that a little bit. And there was a reason I was highlighting specifically the point you made in terms of this team. Like, this team isn't like a team that makes like massive adjustments and timeouts and stuff like that, right? It feels like it's kind of the coaching, the value of the coach and the value of Alex stuff he does is before the game rather than in the game. He can take very good timeouts, sure, but this is like a good round to illustrate kind of what the not even a double-edged sword, because that kind of implies both edges are like as sharp. This edge is not as sharp, if this makes sense. But look at this round here, for example. This is 3-4 against KRX. They've just got a timeout here. KRX have been going hard into A every single round, basically. Just kept hitting A, kept doing. They have the Harbor comp, they have the Viper comp, they're doing the double wall stuff that we talked about with some other teams. I think GE. PRX comp for comp, no pop flashes, you will note. They make the correct adjustment here, which is you peek a little bit on the first line, put smoke down, and as the round goes on, you end up holding into this trap setup here, right? And KRX they're just chilling, basically. The problem is when you have a team that's set up like this, the thing that you run into when you make these adjustments, and it's the right adjustment on a coaching level to be hit fair. Because it hasn't come from the players, when most things come from the players, and therefore the players are a little bit more uncomfortable with it, they don't execute it as well as they would normally. And your standard for how they execute stuff normally is so high because it comes from them most of the time, that it's just not done as well. It's like even though they get the kill, but they haven't kept presence properly on mid. They kind of fall back into the situation. They just get banged out onto yellow. I think so. But yeah, he's just taking a fight here. He just loses, right? That's the point. The plan A the players have come up with here, the plan A that they're playing with is not working out, right? It kind of fails, I think, in this case on a comp level. I think this comp is just not good into this comp. So they go to plan B, which has been set by the coaches. They get more aggressive defensively. I'm not going to show you this entire game. I can tell you they keep doing the correct thing macro-wise after the timeouts. They keep losing every single round. Because they're just not as comfortable playing out what we're talking about here. And this is what we felt like with Santiago with this team, right? You weren't ever scared of a timeout coming out from this team. Like, this was actually, I don't think we did it in the end. This was like a big call I basically had to Bonka before the games, before the second series, and definitely. It was, if there's a possibility to do so, and there wasn't in this case because they did change the comps, but if it was normal comps and normal game state, I was asking him, please, 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 save your timeouts as much as possible for these like last 6 or 7 rounds of the game, basically. Because this is a team, like, PRX are worse coming out of timeouts than the other team most of the time. This makes sense. The other team is going to be able to make more of an adjustment that works for them in that timeout compared to PRX, where they can make the adjustment, they're not going to execute it that well because it's not comfortable. And if you just have a continuous game state with no timeouts, they will make the better decisions in the moment. It's an interesting dynamic. We don't see this much with many teams. And this is kind of why I think when PRX lose generally, it's a stomp, right? And this was the case in this game, certainly. They were, I think it was like a 9-3 half, I think, in the end. They just got stomped in the first half and they couldn't come back, right? And we've seen this, like, when they lose, it's a stomp. They're so hard against going so deep, but yeah.
So I actually have from the Lotus point, I think I have a diagnosis of why they actually are not good on this map, and I think it's because naturally the map doesn't fit the way I just explained that I think they think about the game, right? So the problem is Breeze doesn't have natural lobby lines like Lotus does, for example. This is not a line. This is not really a line. It used to be back in the day, but nowadays it's not really a line you want to or should be taking a lot. And the mid line that also doesn't exist. This is like kind of a line, but it's a very easy line to force out, and it also doesn't give you that much because most of the time, if a team is here, you're not going to be able to do much. Like, you having that line is not going to stop them, basically, right? The issue is on this map, if you want to play like PRX want to play, then you need to recognize that the positions you do that is actually on site. So when they take these timings, when they play these seesaw, when they basically are aggressive, it has to actually be within the third wave on site. They have to basically recognize that, okay, actually, this is where we would normally play it, not here. So for them, it might be very natural to think, okay, we should, and you said it as well, play more aggressively on these lines. Whereas in reality, what they should be doing is maybe, for example, pressuring the lobbies a little bit at the start. Maybe, for example, pressuring, mid at the start. But in general, I would like to see PRX realize that actually our method should be on site. We should be, for example, playing in these areas and playing around these areas where basically the game we want to play is much more playable. And that's, I think, a big misconception about Breeze that people don't realize is the sites are actually... It is a 2-site map in the sense that it's just A, B, and nothing else. Mid doesn't have that much of an impact outside of second contact lurks, in my opinion. It's actually the way you play on site and the way you move around site, you have to treat it almost like it's a side of the map itself. You have to treat this like it is the entirety of C and B on Lotus, and you have to treat this like it is the entirety of A, for example, including the A lobby, right? And you have to, that's why Harbor, for example, always works really good. That's why Double Smokers has always been the best comps on this map, is because you need comps that can cut sites in half and treat them like this is the lobby and this is the site. And for PRX, I think this is what they actually need to do a lot more. They need to treat it like this. They need to be aggressive and be PRX in this area, and then be smart and intelligent and have these timings in these areas and play around these areas with their utility. There is not much you're going to ever be able to do with PRX utility or with utility in general in these areas. These aren't lobbies. These aren't this isn't a traditional Valorant map, and this is what people don't recognize about this map. And I think for them, if they started treating this as the lobby and this is the site, that's when they would have more success. And I think for them it would be an instant switch, basically, and this is for defense specifically, but I think for attack it's also the same situation, right? And I think it's a very general concept, but I think in general that is my diagnosis of why this is a bad map for them currently.
I mean, I think a big thing for me, to add on to what you were saying, Strong, where about it's like they just don't feel like they can react how they would normally react, right? To force into these uncomfortable situations. I think part of that is they haven't really found a good composition that gets the most out of everyone. When we look at that Lotus comp, like I mean, I literally said it. I said the 5 of them are experts in what they do, and then we look at this Breeze comp. Forsaken is your guy on the Neon, which I don't think is his best role, to be honest. I think he can get more out being a support player. Jing is having to play Omen. He's had games on it where he looks good, but like if we average it out, it's drastically worse than his raises, right? Hands down. Envy is comfortable, something is comfortable, and then Devi is like he's playing Viper and he's good on Viper, but I think he's good on Viper when Viper is like that accessory. Viper is the sentinel. That's where he's good. But on Breeze, Viper is kind of your main guy. He's the main smokes. Essentially,
especially he's your main anchor on defense as well.
Yeah, so I just think they're put into these uncomfortable situations, and that's partly why they can't react in the same way that they normally would. Like they don't feel like they can put Jing on the Phoenix, for example. So he's caught not knowing how aggressive he can be, and I think that creates a big problem.
I just if they put Forsaken on Harbor, it would be really good, and I think they would get a lot of value on it on attack and defense actually.
Yeah, I could see that. I just think it's just not a nice fit for them. I also think losing the Yoru in the Yoru nerfs was a big hit. This is a team that likes to rotate fast, that likes to take those risks when it comes to stacking a site and, react on that intuition. But now they don't have a Yoru for the super fast, like, spawn TP. Now, if something is, on B and he wants to get across to A, he's got, like, a 25-second jog to get himself into the fight in the same way. So they, like... It's harder for them to keep that tempo that they want to play at on both halves, in my mind.
Very true. All right.
Yep, I think that's pretty fair. I mean, it's a credit to them that we're talking about that.
I will say, realistically, I don't like this map pool overall for London is insane for them.
Yeah.
To be honest, I think it's a fantastic pool for them. So, like, this is their weakest map, but I do think they can shore it up.
What has been their perma? It's been Pearl, right?
I'd have to check, actually. I can't remember off the dome. But
just
I mean, they've shown that because they've played Pearl. They played Pearl against GE as well. Since Ascent has come in, I mean, we saw them play it a little bit, but that's also been a historical weak spot for them. But I don't even feel like it is anymore.
Yeah, Pearl's.
It also seems like they don't want to play Haven. They don't want to play Haven a lot as well. It seems like.
Yeah. I mean, which is surprising because they're Haven as well. I mean, I think Haven's one of those maps where it's solid for them, but they've always felt like it's less solid than people think. Like you look at the prior, they had it on Santiago. Yeah. Okay. So rounding up now, key player. What are we thinking?
In my mind, I mean, I think Devi is a fair shout. I mean, I think the more obvious one in my mind is Something, just because Something is like he's the backbone of this team. Since he's shot back to Jet, he has to be the guy for them. But I can hear a shout for Devi. Devi is like the most rock solid man that they have. He really does. He does so much for that team that isn't like shown in the scoreboard. Yeah. I will say, but I think when we look at it more from like who needs to be absolutely on for them to do well at London, I think it is Something. He's now back in a meta where he can pretty much perma Jet. Like, it's so favorable for him. Like, we're essentially in a heightened version of the meta of like when he made a name for himself, but now what he's doing is even stronger technically. So I think it should be all about him as we move towards London.
I'd say Devi or Forsaken, actually. I just think they do. I think Jing and Something are equal for me in the sense that they need to show up for them to win, but I think Devi and Forsaken just do a lot of the bitch rolls and do a lot of the heavy work and the grunt work, right?
I mean, I think the thing with Forsaken is he just always turns up, right?
Oh,
yeah, I mean, it's easy to glaze this guy also. I think he might actually be one of the best players ever, to be honest. Like,
I think he's up there. He's probably quietly the GOAT. I mean, I think Something just because like he's elevated, like with the shift past Jet, with how the metas are working, he's a difference maker.
I do agree
brings them all the way.
Key player. Yeah. I do agree that he is the player where, like, if he's good, it's really hard to beat them. If he's off, then it's easier. I would ask you guys this though: if you're going to build a team tomorrow, any player, which player are you taking from PRX? You can only take one.
It's just Forsaken.
I think it has to be just because. I mean, the flexibility of Forsaken is too insane to not take. Like, I mean, would you say Devi?
It's a hard one, huh? No, I would say Forsaken as well.
Okay, I mean, I think it's so hard not to, because he can do everything to such a high level, and like
I think
the big thing, I've said this in a different podcast as well, but he's such a big light player. All season he didn't look amazing. He was like this role playing smokes guy, and we were like, this is our goat. And then we get to Vietnam, the grand finals comes along, and he just like in front of a stage, in front of that big crowd, he really is like a performer in how he plays the game. It's like he's not afraid to take a risk because he's like the circus acrobat walking on a tripwire. It's like he was meant to do it, and it feels scary in the moment, like, oh, is he going to take this peak? But he's so good at it, and I think he embraces that better than anyone.
The thing is, it's an unfair question because like you can't take Divide just because of how good Forsaken is, and I'm also not sure if Divide would work outside of this team. I think he's so good for this team, basically.
Yeah.
But yeah, I also do agree that that something is like the key player in the sense that his performance will rely on, like their overall like results do rely on his performance a little bit in that sense.
Yeah. So what's the expectations for this tournament?
It's first or nothing.
Right? Yeah.
I think this is the tournament to win.
Yeah.
I think there is no better time for Paper Rex to win a trophy than right now. The meta is the meta is like in Santiago, sure, it was like duelist heavy, but it was really it was Neon and Yoru.
Yeah, I mean,
but now
there was a reason something was like uncomfortable on that tournament. It was like not a good meta for him, low key.
But now it's moved into like a sort of open double duelist, which is so perfect. Like Jet Rays looks as good as it's ever looked, and they've been playing Jet Rays longer than anyone has. Like the meta has fallen so perfectly for them. I already said it, but the map pool is so good for them. Like we saw it in the best of 5 against Full Sense. Full Sense banned out Ascent because that was their perma, which is fair enough, and they take out Split because they think Split is Paper Rex's best map, which is a reasonable. We said Lotus, but their Split is also insane. So you take out a map like that, you force them onto a Pearl where they should be more uncomfortable, and they still dominate you, and they go through the series and dominate you. Like even with 2 bans, it's hard to get 3 maps left that they look bad on. I think this is a perfect storm for them.
I will also say, and I agree completely with your point, and I'll even add to it, that it's also the current teams that are good they're going to be facing. It's almost perfect for them because so for example, G2 of course always look super like basically floor for G2 is top 4 in the world, right? And that is their system, that is their structure, that is like everything, right? But they don't look as strong as they've always looked. They 3-2, 3-2, 3-2 to, for example, win the entire NA, right? NRG don't look as strong as they've looked. There is no Fnatic. EU, for example, Heretics, but Heretics have also historically struggled against PRX. I don't even remember if they've beaten PRX. They might have once, but they do struggle against it. I think Heretics is probably the best shout.
They played at Champs, and it was closer than it should have been, to be fair. Like I think it was a 2-1 for PRX. But like that series could have gone both ways.
So Heretics is probably the best team suited to actually be able to beat them. But outside of that, there is no Fnatic. There isn't, a team that can really will just dismantle them, for example, or can just deal with them. Like normally you'd be looking to NRG, G2, potentially like a T1 from Pacific, for example. These kinds of teams, and they're not really as strong as they have been. That being said, of course, these teams might pick up their performance for the LAN, but I think in that sense, the current environment favors them a lot. They look like the strongest team in the world. They look like the team that is able to just 3-0 their opponent and just bang someone out,
Yep, looking forward to Heretics final against Paper X.
Yeah. But I think ultimately for me, if they don't lift the trophy, they'll walk away feeling a little bit disappointed with how this whole thing has been set up.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Okay.
You want to do an outro?
Yep, let's wrap it up. So thank you all for watching. This is actually, I don't know what audio is going to come out, and this is the first one we've recorded. It went a bit longer than I thought, so we'll probably do this as a standalone episode now. You'll know by the time it's released, I guess. But thank you for watching. Thank you, Big Time, for spending like 4 hours on the hottest day of ever in this month in this country.
It's all good. Nice to talk about Valorant, so it's all worth it, even if it feels like I'm in a sauna. So thanks for having me on, boys.
Great.
You obviously do have your own podcast, so
Yeah.
shout them out real
Yeah,
quick.
yeah. It's called Perfect Read with Chobra and Komodo. Mostly talking about Pacific stuff, but if you like the kind of more analytical approach this podcast is taking, we're doing something pretty similar over there. But you know, mostly about Pacific. All of us are incredibly biased. So if you enjoy a little bit of bias, maybe go check that out.
Yeah, link will be in the
It is
description.
also clean how we have also come to the conclusion that all three of the Pacific teams are making it out and also maybe getting top four. You know.
Three
It's
of them
gone
are in
under
the top
radar.
four, in my
Yes,
mind.
it's gone under the radar a little bit.
I was hoping you hadn't noticed that, to be honest. I'm trying to sneak that in.
But yeah, we of course will have the links in the comments for Victor. Thank you, Victor.
Thanks so much, guys. I appreciate you.